Hey there, how you doing? It's Louisa from For Good Astrology coming to you to talk about Jupiter in Gemini. So Jupiter's changing signs tomorrow. It happens pretty regularly, in between 11, 12 months, sometimes a little bit more than that, sometimes a little bit less. And in this video, I'm going to explore the influences that Jupiter brings us, talk a little bit about Jupiter as a god and how he shows up astrologically, understand a little bit about the ongoing cycles of Jupiter. So, for instance, when he was in the sign of Aries, what was he bringing you? In Taurus, what he was bringing you. Now it's going into Gemini. And then like a little bit later on when he goes into Cancer in a year's time, I always think it's interesting to see the position of the planets as a story, as a storyline. If you think of your favorite Netflix series or something like that, where you binge watch, and there'll be individual episodes, but there's always this ongoing storyline arc or this storyline. Yeah, it's like an arc of a story, I guess. And it's that constant theme. So this video is about the constant theme of Jupiter. And right now we're moving from the episode of Taurus into the episode of Gemini. And I want to put it in a bit of context. Maybe we'll also think about, what was happening last time Jupiter was in Gemini for you and the time before, if you can remember. So that's going back 12 years, 24 years. I always think, as we can remember what happened in the past, we get to uncode our birth charts. And then we can think about how we might want to choose to code them this time. There's so much we can explore with this. So let's just dive in right now. So the first thing I'm going to do is just bring up my little notes so I don't get lost. Jupiter. What are the influences of Jupiter? So, a lot of people talk about Jupiter and just say, he's about expansion, and, that he is about everything getting bigger and bolder and grander and stuff. If we think about it, first of all, he's the god of the sky, the weather, and he's also a champion of world order. He wielded a thunderbolt and a scepter. So, this is a being, a godlike energy that has dominion over a lot of things, so he is powerful. Now, it's interesting because, Jupiter is the brother of Neptune, also the brother of Pluto. Now, Pluto is known for his power and his manipulation. And so he is the god of the underworld. Neptune is the god of the seas. Jupiter is the god of the skies. He's got three sisters. So he's got Ceres, who's the goddess of earth. Then there's also, Juno and Vesta. So Vesta is the goddess of the hearth and the intention. So it's like, if you think about the worldly resources of the planet, let's say, it's like the siblings all took a little slice and Jupiter got the sky part of it. So yes, he does have power, and the weather comes from it. Obviously, if you think about all things air-based, it's interesting actually. At the time of the Jupiter Cazimi, we had this great big comet that went over Spain and Portugal, and I was out sat with my husband and friends chatting and stuff, and all of a sudden our sky just turned green. I was like, whoa. There's a lot of sky events going on, because his grandfather is Uranus, who is the god of the heavens. And then Saturn came in between. That's Jupiter's dad. Saturn was really trying to stop all his children because he'd heard a rumor that his children were going to kind of oust him from his power. And that is what happened, actually. Jupiter succeeded his father. But if you think, Jupiter and Uranus, in this last month came together in that very rare conjunction. I say rare, it's rare in our lifetime. It happens every 13, 14 years. But, in the space of like time, it's not that rare, actually. The cycles of life are so much grander. But yeah, interesting as the god of the heavens and the god of the sky come together. There is the aurora borealis effect that everyone is noticing. It's interesting. There's loads of different stories as to how it's originated and what's going on. But suffice to say, with the god of the sky and the god of the heavens, something's happening. And then on the Jupiter cazimi, we had, that was a lovely sort of confirmation of there is stuff happening. And of course, that was just unique to me in my position, not necessarily to you. But isn't it funny how life, planetary energies and stuff show themselves, they reveal themselves to you at all these different times. So yeah, he is a god of weather, a champion of world order. Because if you think about it, world order, and the god of the sky, we're thinking air, not necessarily the element of air as in terms of the elements, like fire, earth, air and water. I wouldn't say that. Jupiter's actually in his detriment in the sign of Gemini, which is the air sign. But if you think of the energy of the sky or the air that we breathe, I always think of thinking and thought and stuff like that. I think, the mind, the construct of the mind and how everything is organized is very much an invisible force. I always think of air. I don't know why, just because communicated thoughts and they happen in a moment's notice. I don't know, but I wish my husband's dog would shut up. It seems every time I go to record at the moment, he starts barking. It's really annoying. So yeah, world order, that's what I'm getting to. The champion of world order, world order is basically a collection of ideas. So yeah, it's interesting. God of sky, champion of world order. Yeah, he's got his thunderbolt, and yeah, it looked like a thunderbolt when that a great big meteorite went over our home just last week. He was also seen as an authority figure, and he was worshipped in grand festivals, games and lavish offerings. Now, some of them were quite murderous. They weren't always that nice, but there was something very grand about Jupiter as well. And so that might be, when I look at Jupiter in terms of astrology, I talk about how we can come into our authority, but also how sometimes Jupiter, an excessive Jupiter energy, can bring up a feeling of arrogance, as if nothing can stop us, and Jupiter can be full of airs and graces, so there's a phrase that I heard one of my cousins say, that somebody was full of piss and importance, and I can't think of any other way of saying it, but it's a bit like, he is self-inflated. So it can definitely talk about the sort of madly egoic expansion energy. And Jupiter is often seen as the good guy and as just this great big benevolent force. But that's, I guess, the shadow side of having that authority is you can believe in your own authority, which again, it's important that we do believe in ourselves, and yet it can get out of proportion. A bit like, a thunderstorm could get really out of proportion. There are parts in the world that get these massive typhoons and things. That's a bit like, Jupiter on steroids, I'm guessing. So he was also celebrated as a god of political and social order and of the highest authority. He also had dominion over borders and alliances. Isn't that interesting? Didn't really know that until I did a bit of a deep dive, because, I like to look at the mythology and the stories, but they don't always come back to the astrological version. However, that said, Jupiter is known as having dominion over belief systems. And so that kind of fits in, if he's the god of political and social order, the highest authority. So Jupiter has a sort of ninth house energy, which is all about belief systems. So think the ninth house. Jupiter represents the full context of knowledge, laws, and also matters that are foreign, overseas, and different. If you think of the ninth house, it is about, it's that place in your birth chart that describes how you feel spiritually, in terms of religion, in terms of your politics, your philosophies. It's a place of higher thought, and it's also a place where we might study to gain a broader perspective. And it also is a place that represents foreign travel, foreign interests, and difference, and how we can adapt to that. So that's interesting. The ninth house is also, it has a sort of resonance with Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the ninth sign of the zodiac. So yeah, I would say that the idea of political social order and the highest authority can really pull into why we talk about the ninth house in those terms. and how Jupiter might rule some of those issues. He also oversaw things, but also delegated and shared power with many other deities. Well, that's interesting because, one of the reasons why Saturn seems to be such a badass is that he wants, there's Pluto that wants the power and has the control. And if you think about him, god of the underworld, everything returns to the ground eventually. And that's why all the world's riches is there, we can mine things there, and so everything returns to Pluto eventually. But Saturn, he absolutely wanted to not be usurped by his children. And the thing is, we get older, we go into our power, we might grow further and deeper into our power, and then we are in this place of birth, life and death, so we age, we mature. And one of the benefits of maturing is that deeper and broader perspective. And then our bodies change, just like everything that you can observe on this planet. Well, everything I've observed that has a life force, it is born, it grows, it gets bigger, and then it reaches its peak, and then it starts to decline. And I think I see a lot of fear and grasping energy, in that fear of letting go of youthfulness. And so what I like about the Jupiter energy is that he delegated and shared his power. I think that's really that's something that really speaks to me about Jupiter. And I think that might be why Jupiter is seen as a planet that is, about trust and faith as well, because you can't delegate power if you don't trust in fellow humans. You just don't do that. You just maintain all the power for yourself. And you don't share it. So I love the fact that he delegated and shared things out. So he must have been quite a good manager. When I think of Saturn and Jupiter, they are both, like they are our conduits of communication throughout the solar system. So we say that the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars are our personal planets. Okay, 2 of those are satellites, but allegedly, who knows? But the personal planets, they are the things that really we can see how it relates to our personality. So the moon in Pisces for me really describes my sort of emotional pace, just like the moon and its position in your chart will really sort of highlight your emotions. So they're really, really personal. Then you got your outer planets that are really bringing in all the sort of outer stuff that comes to you from afar. Also the changes in consciousness that seem to happen, across this realm. So all these new ideas come in, new consciousness rises up, and as that rises up, it slowly filters into us. If you think about it, since the pandemic in 2020, there has been a lot of very strong shifts in consciousness as to what's okay to say, what's not. A very strong consensus about censorship. I am already seeing new consciousness coming up in conflict to that and in response to that. But, that is all coming from those outer planets. And then Jupiter and Saturn are the things that are like the gatekeepers, the gatekeepers to the unconscious mind and the conscious mind. It's like they're letting in information and disseminating it to us, i.e. like by being an authority or being a government or, being an association. So Saturn, if you think of management, profiles, Saturn is the kind of boss that is absolute, that says this is the law and you follow it. Saturn much prefers to be in charge, so can get a bit dictatorial, especially if Saturn is supported by Pluto. Those two energies together, I was very concerned when Saturn was in Scorpio. This is quite a long time ago now. When Saturn was in Scorpio and Pluto was in Capricorn, they were in each other's signs and they were really collaborating. I really think the world started to reorder during that time in quite a strong way, although I do believe that's been going on for donkey's years. But, Saturn is the absolute power. He wants the power and he will hold on to it. Whereas Jupiter is like the visionary. So if you think of CEOs, I've worked for a lot of international companies, in particular in banking. So I worked for JP Morgan Chase, Chase Manhattan Bank. And then, I worked as a freelancer for a lot of banks and insurance companies. And during that time, I really noticed that there are these kind of VPs, and I don't know how it translates, into the company and culture that you live in. But, there would always be these middle managers kind of high up, but not selling the vision, and they were the ones that were managing everything on a day-to-day basis. And they were the ones that were crossing the T's and dotting the I's and going, That's the kind of Saturn function. And then there was always somebody Jupiter at the top. Sorry, Saturn, your sun has really usurped you, because the person at the top is like the figurehead. The person at the top is the person that's selling the vision. You can't have, I don't know. I just think the Jupiter way of managing is to have a vision and to inspire and engage other people with that vision. And then they can find the will to get involved. But the Saturn, if you've got the Saturn figurehead at the top, it's stern, it's serious, it is censoring, it is telling you what you have to do, and it's for your own good. So, yeah, I can see that Jupiter is a very, very powerful planet. And maybe, in recent years, he hasn't been seen as quite as powerful as he is. But yeah, I do like Jupiter, I have to say. So he succeeded his dad, Saturn. He's also married to Juno, which is his sister, but hey, it was okay back then. He was married to Juno and he had many indiscretions. Now, that's an interesting thing, because you'd think, wow, he sounds so responsible and so nice. And yes, he trusts people, and he's all about belief systems and expansion and stuff. But he's also known for going overboard. So this is one of the sides of Jupiter that I think astrology really carries and goes with. And that is that Jupiter is about excess and expansion and I think overconfidence. So, Jupiter doesn't know where his boundaries lie. That's why somebody with a very strong Jupiter function, especially if you've got a strong Jupiter and Neptune going on in your chart, or if they go hand in hand, it can often lead to the sort of indiscretions that maybe Jupiter suffered from, but also the kind of good time, good vibes, where Jupiter is aligned to Venus, for instance. The more extreme that link between them is, the more good feeling you're wanting to generate. But Jupiter and Venus, like yesterday, we did actually have the Jupiter and Venus conjunction, starting off a whole new wave of well-being, we could say. I think I called it Make a Wish. It's kind of great energy. And of course, it was also in a sextile to Neptune, really adding into the magic and the desire to really go for what we would really like to achieve, to really dig into our closely guarded wishes for ourselves that maybe we didn't share with other people. But anyway, Jupiter in really difficult squares and oppositions to some of the more unboundary planets like Neptune, let's say. There are people who struggle with alcohol consumption, with drugs, but also with knowing what is real and knowing, where they start and where they end. The unboundariedness of Jupiter can lead us to getting really overboard. And these squares and oppositions don't always lead to addictions. Absolutely not. I don't want to be fatalistic in the way I'm describing this. I've got Jupiter and Neptune in a square, and I can absolutely attest to the fact that, when I'm onto a good thing, I don't want to stop. So, it gets to a stage where you forget to even ask yourself, am I going overboard here? And it's something that, with maturity, I'm learning about, but I can see in my earlier years, if I'd heeded, my birth chart, if I'd really taken into consideration how it works, and if I had the maturity to see that, I might have lived my life a bit differently. I might have decided to be a bit cleaner, and not go out on the lash, for a good drink. I was a bit of a party, not an animal, but I was a bit of a party girl for a while. So yeah, we all have these things, and Jupiter shows us where we go overboard. So see where he is in your chart, and it will give you a massive clue as to where there is the potential for you going overboard. But yeah, this other thing I've said, and this is why people love Jupiter. He's not doing it to be malicious. I really don't think Jupiter is wanting things to be malicious. If ever Jupiter is, coming down on something and making a judgment. It will be, I don't know, because of a religious or a philosophical ruling, and I guess that could link into religious elitism. So again, that could be where the Jupiter function does go overboard as well. But ordinarily I wouldn't say that the Jupiter function is particularly malicious, but it is a little bit innocent, sort of following good feelings without really talking to himself and checking in to check that he's not going overboard. So here's the Jupiter cycle. It's 11.9 years. You can get this from astro-seek.com, which I do. I love this little diagram. They'll do it for every single planet. It's really, really helpful because you get to see how even the orbit of that planet is as it goes through the ecliptic, the signs of the zodiac. So for instance, Jupiter went into Aries in 2022. You can just see it's May 2022. And he was there for 0.87 years. Then he went into Taurus and he was there for 1.03 years. Now he's going into Gemini for 1.04 years. So it's not an even cycle, but it's pretty even. If you look at it, you can see that he's spending slightly more time on this side of the zodiac and slightly less time here. So he has got an elliptical cycle, an observable elliptical cycle, but it's not massively elliptical. If that was a wheel, you would still be able to go somewhere on it. So yeah, that gives you a flavor for the regularity of it. So we say roughly a year he changes signs, and if he goes into the sign just before he goes retrograde and then retrogrades back into the other sign and then goes forwards again, that can sometimes make it appear like a longer period of time. Like I said, he's the ruler of Sagittarius and Pisces, the two star signs. And if you think of those two star signs, that it's the 9th star sign and the 12th. So he also does have rulership, or he does also have influence in the 9th house and the 12th house. So we've been talking about Jupiter mainly through the 9th house function, about beliefs, expansion, the appreciation of all things foreign. If you remember on a previous slide, I said he also managed boundaries and borders. So I guess you would have to have an interest in all things foreign to realize you might also want some boundaries and borders. If we didn't have boundaries and borders, we wouldn't actually know we were going anywhere different. That's a kind of interesting thought, isn't it? That's how we know that we're going to experience something new, because there is a new name for it and a new idea that's conjured up by that name. Like, for instance, I'm sat here in Portugal, but it's on the continent of Europe. And if we didn't have these borders and the names and the ideas of the culture that goes with it, we could just think we were on one landmass, and we could talk about being in Europe. And in actual fact, if we're in Germany or in France or in Spain, or actually back here in Portugal, we would have a very different experience. Yes, we're all related, but there is difference as well. Our languages, there are some language themes across Europe, like Portuguese, Spanish and Italian, all, if you speak one, you can recognize the others. They are a bit like in Scandinavia, how the Scandinavians, the Danish, the Swedish, the Finnish and Danish, did I already say that? They have some similarity, and also they can recognize a little bit of Dutch. There are language patterns, but Jupiter seeing borders and recognizing that there are these areas that say this is this and this is that, a bit like I'm me and you are you. Where do I end? I guess where my skin is, that's my border. So the recognition of borders is the thing that allows you to see that there is a polarity, that there is a difference, and for you to notice that there is a different culture. Interesting thought. But anyway, so the 9th house is very much a Jupiter thing, but the 12th house is as well. Jupiter is also the ruler of Pisces. Now, Pisces also has rulership with Neptune, which is Jupiter's brother. you know, and so you've got the god of the sky and you've got the god of the oceans, you know, Neptune. Like, where does Neptune's boundaries end? God only knows. Like, the oceans are absolutely, you can't find a drop in the ocean. A bit like the whole idea of consciousness, which is very much a 12th house. If this was our birth chart, then sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. So, oh yes, Sagittarius. Duh. So this would be our 9th house here, where we're experiencing all things foreign and elevated and higher consciousness. And then this is the unconscious mind, represented by Pisces. You know, and it is foreign and it is big and it is vast, and we don't know where we can't always get to the full meaning of where our behaviors come from. It's very, very psychic, and we can get completely lost in the 12th house. And for most of us, we keep it hidden. We don't actually go for a good old look or a good old rummage through our unconscious mind. And so, yeah, the 12th house brings up some nasty surprises. Now, if you think about the ocean, we have no idea what is there. And I'm pretty sure if we were to go diving, we would find lots of things that could scare us. You know, some of those videos about some of the creatures that live in the oceans that we never see, they are so foreign to us and so unusual and so hidden. And some of them are like the things of nightmares. So, you know, Jupiter and the crossover with Neptune is creating quite a different vibe, but the spirituality, I think, really links the two. And this idea that we can go and explore and have an adventure through the 12th house is really big. What also interests me is Uranus can go into the sky. Not Uranus, sorry, Neptune. If you think of the water element, you know, there is water in every bit of air that we're breathing. You know, there is moisture. So there is this kind of crossover. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of waxing lyrical. In fact, the whole delivery today is very, very Jupiter-like. And I am a Sagittarius and my Jupiter is in Pisces. So I do have a very, very strong Jupiter, hence most likely why it's long-winded and quite like, oh, isn't that fascinating? Now, you know, Jupiter is in his detriment in his opposite signs. So he rules Sagittarius, and there's his opposite sign, Gemini, which is the sign he's just going into now. And obviously that's ruled by Mercury. You know, Jupiter is not happy here, just like Mercury is not happy in Sagittarius. So Jupiter is not working to his, you know, he's not in his preferred role right now, we could say. And he's also not very comfortable in the sign of Virgo, where I think the Virgoan love of getting really clear and no disrespect to Virgos, but their ability to fact find and check and verify things, which, you know, to a Jupiterian character is a bit like being nitpicky, you know, because, you know, Jupiter is always like big picture and the Virgo love of getting into the intricacies of things. You may find that Jupiter going through this can get quite critical and judgmental. But anyway, let's move on. So yeah, if there were some good little catchphrases or words to describe Jupiter energy, I would say faith, hope, luck, expansion, also rising and the growth. Like Jupiter, when he was born, he was hidden away in a cave so his dad didn't eat him. That's what Saturn did to all of his siblings. You know, he was kept alive because his mum really wanted a baby that was going to survive. Later on, he learned the truth of who he was, and he rescued his siblings by cutting open his dad's chest or poisoning him. I can't remember how it happened, but all of his siblings burst out of his chest or were vomited up, kind of gross and interesting at the same time. So he had this kind of very rapid growth to prominence, you know, as he succeeded his father and freed his siblings. Boy, did people hear about him. So it is this rising power. If you think he was once hidden away and then there he is. Ta-da! So he grows. It's arrogant. There is a feeling of chance. You know, would he have done that if he had never been told who he really was? So there is an element of, you get confidence by having that chance encounter that can really turn things around. A lot about beliefs, well-being, and confidence, and also fame. You know, he was a beloved leader or a beloved god. You know, he was enjoyed because of his joie de vivre. You know, he had a joy for life. So when Jupiter was going through, and again, you can get this information through AstroSeek, so astro-seek.com. You can see where Jupiter, these are the moments of ingress. Ingress is the term we use to describe when a planet goes into a new sign of the zodiac. So you can see here, he's ingressing into Aries at 0 degrees 00. Then he came out, he went over that point again as he was retrograde. Then he obviously was back in Pisces. Then he went forward again into Aries, actually on my birthday. Now, you know, you can see his movement. So in the sign of Aries, he was bringing faith, hope, luck, expansion to all things about our identity, because the sign of Aries is very much about our identity and our personal power. So it's something about how we could grow in our power that was really going on for us around 2022. And that's collectively. Now, obviously, if you're where Aries is in your birth chart, if it's in like the 8th house, it would have to do with your identity in respect of other people's visions and values, because the 8th house has everyone else's judgments in there. If your Aries, for instance, is in the 10th house, yes, you are Jupiter coming into your 10th house is affecting how you do your identity at a very public level. So you can see how it all develops. Then, you know, he went into the sign of Taurus, you know, where we've been thinking about how we can expand on our comfort and security. So you might have found that you've been working your money a lot better. You've been noticing where your skill sets are and maybe charging a bit more for them or changing the way you work. Now he's going into the sign of Gemini. The Gemini theme is coming out. So some of the things about Gemini, we've got community, we've got learning, sharing, socializing, and being very flitty. If you think of the 3rd and the 9th house polarity, the 9th house is about big thinking, higher education, study to degree, master level, becoming a teacher, becoming a mentor, becoming a guide, becoming a political correspondent. Publishing is a big 9th house theme as well. Now in the 3rd house, the opposite, it's about the local environment and the first starting point of learning. So, you know, I've got small kids, as you might know, and you know, I see how children learn. Like, they're learning from their immediate environment, they're learning from their peers, their siblings, they're learning from their parents, they're learning from the security. As they get bigger, they go into the community a bit more. That's the Gemini thing, you know, they start to go into that 3rd house function. They start to interact with other children, other families. They learn more through their interactions. And it's always little bits of interactions. That's why I guess kids' programs are short and sweet and deeply colourful. So the Gemini energy, I always think of it as being like a butterfly flitting from flower to flower, or bee to bee, you know, bee going from flower to flower, getting all the juicy bits, but not necessarily eating and getting the goodness from every single part of the flower. They're just going for the sweet nectar and the pollen, and before going off to the next place to have a little bit of a search mission for the good stuff. So yeah, children, they are absolutely zoned in on everything bright and beautiful and sweet. It's the sweet stuff. It's like the butterfly. They're going from bit to bit to bit. And Jupiter here, which is voracious and wants to experience everything really deeply and at a high level, and wants to have control, like a certain amount of control and authorship and sovereignty, which is why I guess, you know, the 9th house is quite important. So how can we have sovereignty whilst we're in this kind of small fragmented space? Well, I think AI could really come into that, because, you know, AI is maybe delegating some of the thinking capacity to somebody else. You know, Jupiter trusted people or services to get things done. I think AI is going to come on in leaps and bounds, because AI is very much a Gemini function, especially when Jupiter goes into a trine with Pluto. I'll talk about that later. But everything to do with information sharing is set to go boom. Like ideas are going to travel faster and quicker and reach like further into communities than they ever have done before. I think the nature of programming, I think the nature of how we learn already, how we learn is different. So for years now, children, I mean, like in my lifetime and, in the generation of my parents, it was normal for children to just go to school from word go. I think the pandemic and what ensued thereafter has actually turned the tables and changed the culture. I think children can learn now. Like, who are our teachers? Who are our authorities? Now, it could go the other way, that people learn from TikTok, which is very much a Jupiter in Gemini kind of phenomenon. If you think it's a lot of information in a really small little package that's bright and colorful. But the nature of sharing, the nature of learning is going to be changing. It's going to get bigger, bolder, brighter, because Jupiter doesn't do anything by halves, and he's going to put quite a lot of power into it. So I think everything to do with sharing information is going to just expand exponentially. So you might think in your chart, well, okay, where is my Gemini? Oh, it's here. How is information sharing? How is socializing, which is very much a back and forth of information? How is the community? How is my experience in the community going to change with Jupiter and Gemini? So you might want to consider where Jupiter is going in your chart as he's in the sign of Gemini. What is that going to influence? Because you're going to be learning there and doing a lot of sharing. And if Jupiter's going into your third house, then like if you've got Aries rising, that's the only way it would happen really, or Pisces rising, just, this Jupiter is going to have a double community, double learning, double socializing kind of energy for you. Now, in his next incarnation, he's going to be moving on to the sign of Cancer on the 9th of June, 2025. That's about our family structure and home. So he's going to bring his well-being there. Now, Jupiter's actually exalted in the sign of Cancer. So it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to that. Let's move on. So yeah, we've got the faith, hope, luck, expansion. And then the third sign, Gemini, ruled by Mercury, about the community, learning social habits. That's interesting. Wonder how our social habits, I imagine social media is going to change beyond recognition. I really do. Our venturing into the world is very commercial. That's another thing. Never has it been actually made more easy to make money now. Years ago, you'd have to go to school to learn particular skills, to then go into the workplace, where you found that most of the skills that you learned at school actually haven't been required. Unless you are doing something that involves like a legal, marketing, medical, like there are certain jobs that appear to need really consistent training. But for most jobs, it's about your mindset and your willingness and your personality. And it's just really good that you can use your language, that you can use maths, and that you can understand the world and not be a complete idiot. So I think, we have all been studying, like right now, as I look around before I left the UK, and, I noticed it here in Portugal, I noticed that we had the very, very best well-trained, well-educated baristas. So when I was going out for coffee, I would see loads of people that had trained for particular jobs, and then they couldn't get those jobs. They're like, it's almost like there is a mismatch in how much we're educating ourselves for and the actual level of jobs that exist. Now that's based on the fact that we've been going to get jobs from employers. Well, I think what's happening now is a lot of us can become self-employed. If you've got a talent, if you've got an interest, and if you've got the basic skills that everybody really needs to get by in life, and you've got the right personality and you're ready for it, I really think the world is your oyster. As technology is changing, there are going to be so many opportunities to be able to work for yourself and to provide value in some way. So I do think business could be coming back to the individual, and that we get our own power to be commercial. Interestingly as well, and this is more of a sort of general comment, it's interesting that Jupiter rules boundaries and borders, because one thing that I now realize is most of us have relationships with companies rather than countries and governments, so I have more to do with things like Google, Netflix, and YouTube. They have more influence on my life than some of these governments appear to. And so, Netflix will have members, it will have customers all over the world. It will have links into them and arrangements with them that far exceed the breadth that a government has. So these companies, and then that's not including things like electricity companies. And, obviously there are much bigger companies. I'm just talking very much about my immediate vicinity, and I know that YouTube, the internet, and Google seem to get a lot of our attention in our family. So, these bigger companies are more important to human life, it would appear, than the governments. Now, obviously the governments help to put in the infrastructure and do this, that and the other, but there is a switch of power. I don't think the governments are actually really in charge, because actually most of us are living and working really globally now, like the rise of the remote worker, the nomadic business owner. You can pretty much work anywhere you want to in the world if you're able to get online. And yes, you might have to do a bit of tweaking in terms of how you manage your tax and how you register and how long you stay somewhere. But there are completely new models for life now. So I think Jupiter going into Gemini is not going to curb that. It's going to expand on it in a big, big way. It's going to open up more opportunities. And as these tech savvy companies come up, creating really great tools that help you do even more as an individual person from the comfort of your own home, things are going to get more exciting. Now, obviously, if you're in a business whereby you are doing some of the process for other people, that could be a little bit hard for you, because people are going to learn how to do it for themselves. So there is a culture shift going on right now. And if anything, I think what that culture shift is encouraging us to do is to get really good at what we're doing. And it's not so much about the actual specific skill, but it's like, do you have the right attitude to be able to learn and reinvent yourself over and over and over? And I think the people that can reinvent themselves over and over and over, because they've got a fantastic mindset, they're really positive, really can-do people, which is very much a Jupiterian thing. Think how much faith and hope he has in himself. Think how much luck comes from the fact that he is hopeful and expanded. And he sets his goals really high and far. And it doesn't matter if he doesn't achieve them, because just by setting that great big goal, he got further than he would have done had he not bothered. So I think, the people that have the can-do attitudes are going to go further. So I think watch your attitudes. That I think your what you're bringing from your personality is much more important now. So it's worth having a think back to what you were doing the last time Jupiter went into Gemini. Sorry, this video is a bit of a rant, isn't it? It's like a seminar. Oh my God. Forgive me. I just love this subject and I'm thinking out loud. Again, we are in these Jupiter, Uranus, Venus, Neptune times, just after a full moon in Sag as well. So that's where all this judgment and ideas are coming from. In 2000, mid-year, in June 2000, Jupiter went into Gemini. And in June 2012, Jupiter went into Gemini. Now, I know what I was doing at those times. So that gives me a little bit of an idea as to what might be happening. So for me, in 2000, in fact, both of mine have something to do with the community, interestingly, even though it's not in my fourth house or my third. But in 2000, I moved to a new area and bought a house. and really started to get known in my local area. I started to interact with people in my local area and work and live, and I just did everything from there. And it was great. It just felt it was the start of something new. And then in June 2012, my husband and I were invited to live somewhere, and it had its own unique community. And again, we had this deeply fulfilling time where we were able to live somewhere where we were really involved with the local environment, and it became our life, it became our identity. So it will be interesting to see how that transpires in 2024. But yeah, going back to those areas and thinking, what was going on for me? What was the Gemini theme? It wasn't so much a third sign thing, definitely moving into a new community. One thing that I did get from both of those was a sense of belonging, and they were very, very social times, a lot of interaction, a lot of new friends flooding in for me. So it wouldn't be wrong of me to assume that in this particular moment in time, a whole new bunch of people are going to flood into my life. I will have a new sense of belonging, and most likely be transacting with these new people, in the way that wherever I go, I always get involved within my community. I think the big difference now is most likely the community I'm more involved in is likely a global one rather than an immediate one. But who knows, that I may well find myself in this local community here as well. So yeah, it's, for me, how it reflected in my chart was there was a sense of belonging. Finally, I have a sense of belonging, and I am learning within a social environment. And also lots of quick bursts of rational focus. I remember in 2012 in particular, I was doing a lot of training. I was doing lots of delivery, lots of facilitation, and I know full well, as Jupiter's going into Gemini, that's coming up for me in this next year too. So yeah, actually, in 2000, that was when I was training to be a facilitator. I didn't even make that connection when I was learning before. Wow, I'd forgotten that. That's great. That's when I actually did my studies for facilitation and teaching. So there we go. So yeah, have a think back. I've just shown you how it worked for me. What were you doing in the summers of 2012? And what were you learning? How were you expanding? And then think, oh, okay, maybe I need to prepare for that. And you might also want to think what was preceding that and then where it went after. So for instance, before I moved those 2 times, I was definitely in a place thinking, where the hell is my security? How can I earn more money? How can I feel more comfortable? I really wasn't that comfortable in either of those times, because I was in this state of moving and this feeling of, I know I would like a home where I feel a lot more secure. In 2011, I also had a child, my first son. And so again, there was this sense of, I need more security around me to feel a lot more comfortable. And then in the years after, I actually felt that I was embedded in my community. So when it went into Cancer, I was feeling really comfortable, and yeah, feeling a lot more like there was more of a family feel for me. What did I write there? How did your growth into the community, business and socializing lead you to your next expansion of Jupiter and Cancer? Yeah. I just, for me, when Jupiter was in Cancer, it conferred a time of greater peace, greater like heart warmth. It felt like I belonged, but there was a greater sense of feeling for me. So again, it's interesting to just see how this translates into your own life as well. Before I go any further, just want to thank all the people, kind people that support this channel, and comment. I have to say, I haven't really responded to everyone's comments for a while. It's been a bit bonkers here. I've got my parents visiting as well. And there's so much going on. I will get to the comments. It's really important that I do get back to you. I love the fact that, so many of you are supportive with donations or with comments and feel good feelings. So thank you so much. in many ways, like this channel, it's you, it's not me. Like, yeah, I'm putting the programs out there, but you can't have a channel without the people, because you know it doesn't move, it doesn't go anywhere. So thank you, everyone. Okay, so let's have a look at the Jupiter ingress chart to understand the actual planetary codings of when this happens. Okay, so in the chart, so it goes into Jupiter on May the 25th, stroke 26th. So if you are in London, or you are earlier in the day to London, so Sydney, all through Australia, Indonesia, China, etc., up until London, then Jupiter is going in on the 26th. If you are beyond that, then Jupiter is going into Gemini at the tail end of the 25th. At the moment that he goes in, he's in a conjunction with Venus and the Sun. Now, he is under the beams of the Sun still, so he's slightly overpowered by the Sun, but he's also in a conjunction with Venus, which I think is really quite special. You know, these are the two benefics. So to me, this Jupiter moment in time, this next year is deeply, deeply powerful. I think a lot of things are going to shift and move. He's also still in a conjunction with Uranus, you know, more shifting. You know, I wonder what's happened since the start of the new Jupiter-Uranus cycle, which is just over a month ago. What has shifted and changed in your life? So much has shifted and changed. And thankfully, I was kind of clued into it. You know, about a week before those two came together, new things came to me out of the blue. And then, you know, since the conjunction, it felt like, okay, this is a possibility. I can see this is going to happen. And it's just been gathering momentum really, really fast. So I think, you know, this is like the quick movement of consciousness, the quick movement of these new ideas is transforming the lives of lots of people right now. And so again, as Jupiter goes into Gemini, this whole new phase carries all of that energy. He's already in a trine to Pluto in Aquarius. Now, Pluto's here. He's not exactly in the trine. He's been in the trine for ages, but he will be going exact into the trine soon. I'll probably record something about that as well, because it's really powerful. But this is very, very powerful. You know, so he's the god of the sky. Pluto's the god of the earth. And then Neptune in between is aspecting both of them. You know, he's the god of the oceans. It's like sky, heaven, because that's Uranus as well, the ground and the water all coming together. This could be all of the pieces of your life working together. It's very, very strong, this ingress into Gemini. Now, he's also in opposition to Pallas Athena in Sagittarius. I do like Pallas Athena. I love Pallas Athena. She's amazing. She really does give us the ability to see what's going on and to step outside of ourselves and to really look. You know, often we're so tight in our life. You know, we're just in the moment the whole time, like running around like crazy people. And what Pallas Athena gives us the opportunity to do is just to step out. And I've said Pallas Athena's in Sagittarius. I can see she's not. She's actually in Scorpio there. So forgive that typo. I was being a bit slapdash. So yeah, Jupiter in opposition to Pallas Athena. But you know, Pallas Athena is showing us how to see all these patterns. She's asking us to look at these patterns. So she's in Scorpio, which makes her pattern recall even sharper. So yeah, there is something very big shifting and changing. And it's also prudent to be really aware of all of those patterns and how they're coming together. Really notice what's repeating for you and think, oh, there's a reason for that. Wonder what that is. Jupiter is also semi-square the North Node in Aries. Now, the semi-squares are quite motivational and frustrating. So there's a semi-square. So there's some frustration. The way I see it, And I haven't driven for years, but and I don't drive stick in the way that so many Americans. You've got automatic cars, haven't you? But in the UK, where I'm from, it's manual. But I guess the whole sensation of being ready to go, but still having your handbrake on, is the thing that I think everyone can relate to here if you're a driver. So Jupiter is raring to go, and maybe there's some kind of karmic a handbrake, that's pulling us back. It just feels like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. I really do need to move on this. And yet there is something just like getting us. And it's interesting because the North Node is in Aries, which usually does want to take action. So it might be that there's a little bit of frustration that what you're raring to go on maybe isn't quite in alignment with what you think your karma is. And that's interesting because I just think whatever life is giving you, it's always for you. Like what is coming up is for you, even if it doesn't feel like it's for you. There's something linking back to you. So I don't know, maybe there are opportunities coming up that maybe you can't quite see as being yours, but they are. This stuff to work on. And it's obviously sextile Neptune in Pisces, which I spoke about in my last video. At the same time as this all coming in, Mars is also in a conjunction to the North Node and Chiron, which in and of itself is not to be ignored. Like Mars, our will to thrive and survive, is very purposeful right now, and is actually wanting to kind of slay all the dragons, all the things that have maybe caused us pain. We are quite raw with things, and lots of old pains and stuff are resurfacing. They're coming up to be acknowledged. So, there is this rawness, which is quite fresh, actually, because for a lot of us, it's very easy to go to sleep, at this time in humanity's evolution. There's so many different things that can numb us and distract us and help us sleep, help us forget all these different slights and wounds and this, that, and the other. But this year in particular, with the North Node and Chiron that have been together, it's awoken us to these parts of our personality that we just can't smooth over anymore. So yeah, as Jupiter is expanding, I think our reawakened sense of what has hurt us and maybe what we need to do about it is also ringing in our ears, so it's worth still bearing that in mind. Also, Saturn's in a conjunction with Neptune, almost, is coming in. These two are going to be a very powerful connection. I will be talking about that in a future video. I see this little corridor between the two of them. I was having a conversation with my good friend Alexandra Jowett, who's an astrologer from Jupiter Returns, and I can't remember what we were calling it. It was something like the oh crikey, I need to just pause this and find out. I've just remembered, we were joking about it. We were having a conversation about Saturn conjunct Neptune, and we were saying it's like a portal of distorted reality, because Saturn is all about everything that's real and the pain of the real, and then Neptune's all about the distortion. And so here in this little pocket between the two, there's this potential for distorted reality, and how can we get clearer with our reality? So that's also going on, and that's going to be exploited, I imagine, during this Jupiter and Gemini time, when social media and all of our social stuff and all of our media stuff and all of our computer stuff, it's going to go galloping off into the future. Be aware of these distorted realities. They're going to be given free rein. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on about this. And also we've got Mercury in a conjunction with Uranus. So Mercury is the mind, Uranus is the higher mind. There is a very, very strong mentality as Jupiter's going there. So I can't stress enough how this particular Jupiter cycle is really going to, do the biz. It's pretty phenomenal. The trine to Pluto is pretty big. That's a very sort of yeah, I mean, it doesn't come around that often. You know, Jupiter obviously takes just under 12 years to go by. So he will have a trine with Pluto once and then twice. And then will come into a conjunction. So yeah, these don't happen very often, but they're very, very strong. The sextile to Neptune again doesn't happen that often. So that these are the big sort of calling cards of this energy right now. And then the portal of reality distortion or distorted reality, that's the other big one to watch out for. Something else I noticed, I will get to the forecast in a sec. When Jupiter goes into the sign of Gemini, the first aspect he makes is a conjunction with Mercury, which is obviously the ruler of Gemini. And then the very last aspect that Jupiter makes, which is just at the bottom here, is another connection, another conjunction with Jupiter in Mercury. Jupiter and Mercury in Gemini. So they are both conjunctions in Gemini. This one's at 2 degrees and this one's at 29 degrees. So this is significant. It's interesting. During this time, the Mercury and Jupiter aspects are really going to be sort of reflecting more on the Jupiter and Gemini energy, if you think like Mercury's the ruler of it. And so of particular interest, I would say, is when Jupiter's in Gemini and Mercury is in his detriment in the sign of Sagittarius. These are going to be some very, very strong times where we may not even know what to believe, they are equal and opposite in each other's opposite signs. It's going to be very, very strong. And, this last one on the 4th of December, both of them are also retrograde. So you got Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius and then Jupiter retrograde in Gemini. So I would say this window from the end of November to the beginning of December, there could be a lot of confusion, a lot of different sort of old patterns coming up. So again, which houses are these going to be falling in your chart? It's worth noticing that. And then the squares, when Mercury's in Virgo and then also when Mercury's in Pisces, these are going to make communication really quite interesting during those times. And also have a think, do you have a Mercury and Jupiter aspect in your chart? Because you've got a theme for the Jupiter and Gemini energy. So the trine with Pluto is literally exact on the 3rd of June. So not long now. It's literally just in 10 days time or so, just under. Now he's been in a trine with Pluto from the 2nd of May, and that's going on until the 28th of June. So it's quite a good, deep level of connection. And he's in the exact trine from the 29th of May to the 7th of June. This is a very, very strong time. Any ideas that are coming up that you really want to take forward, you really want some power on, then the 29th to the 7th of June is a really, really deep and powerful time. So I've put here, it's an exciting time, powerful communication, AI, stronger levels of influence, because you think Pluto has absolute power. There's an opportunity to find power, an outlet to be received. Where have you learnt to share your joyful power and love of information? Rising up comes from sharing. So some really great ideas. So I think this is a really strong time for anyone that is disseminating information and sharing things. It's very, very powerful. And then later on during this time of Jupiter and Gemini, there's going to be some squares to Saturn, which are going to be pretty troubling. They're not going to be easy. So we've actually got 4 of them. And they start in the sign of Gemini and I said 4 of them, there's 3 of them. They start in Gemini and Saturn is in Pisces. And then by the time Saturn and Jupiter have finished with their squares, Jupiter's in the sign of Cancer and Saturn's in the sign of Aries. So there's going to be a very, very strong theme going on here. I've put all the dates here, but essentially it's frustration, so that you've got the energy of growth and the energy of rules and boundedness, restriction. So it's like restrictions between what you're growing and how you're growing and where you're feeling stuck. What old restrictions are holding you back from really moving forwards? How is a slower pace serving you? So yeah, if you've got some really big developments going on this year, it's worth jotting down these times: the 19th of August, the 24th of December, and June the 15th of 2025. These are times when that absolute stuckness comes about. One thing to bear in mind is actually Jupiter and Saturn are in a square pretty much from the 15th of July until the 24th of July, with the exception of a tiny little leeway point between the 21st of February and the 12th of April. They are within an orb of 8 degrees of each other pretty much for a whole year, without, that little bit from the end of February to early April. So, this is an ongoing thing. We are growing, and yet we're not growing that as fast as we might want to. But there will be a reason why that's serving us. A bit like, I love growing plants, as you might have known. And I've always got lots of little seedlings in my garden. That's why I'm looking that way. That's where my garden is. So I've always got these little seedlings, and I've noticed that when I plant them, rather than in the center of the pot, when I plant them around the outside, it seems to help them grow steadier roots. It's almost like they're growing deeper roots because they're against a hard surface. It's like when there's something resisting them, they grow stronger against it. So I don't know if that's actually true from a horticultural perspective, but that's my own observation, and I'm sticking with it for now. I guess they get a strong root pattern. Like when you put it in the center of a plant pot, the roots go out and they kind of just go out, but they don't get any sort of density. They're quite spaced out, whereas against a hard surface, they grow much stronger in a more focused way. So I think I've got stronger plants there. And I think that's what's happening with this square. So, whatever is holding you back, it might be because you're not really ready to zoom off just yet. There's more things to learn, and it will serve you. So there you go. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is have a look for about 10 minutes per sign and talk about, we've had Jupiter in Taurus, it's now in Gemini, then it's going into Cancer, and we've got the square between Jupiter and Saturn, and we've also got this very motivating, beautiful trine between Jupiter and Pluto. So I'm going to talk through those aspects and give a little bit of guidance, maybe put it into context according to where your ascendant is. That will highlight where this is showing up in your charts. Whew. Okay, so let's have a look at Aries ascendant. So this is a forecast very much about Jupiter going into Gemini and what that's going to bring for you. So if we have a look at this, with your Aries ascendant using a tropical Western whole sign charting system, Jupiter going into Gemini is occurring in your third house. It's emphasizing your third house, which funnily enough is the natural home of the energy of Gemini. So Jupiter coming here into your third house is elevating everything to do with the community, with the idea of what you're learning, how you're contributing to your local environment. Are you part of it? Do you have that sense of belonging right now? Because that's really important. Now, where Jupiter's been, like in the last couple of years, Jupiter was in Aries, came over your first house, often coincides with an increase in our weight around the waistline. And it often brings about a feeling of being okay in yourself. Jupiter coming through this area is really about you becoming more of a character, you becoming more of a great person. There is this sense that your reputation is improving, it's getting better. And then, last year, May 23 to just where we are now, Jupiter's been going through your second house. So it's like all the good work that you've done in creating the great persona that you've got in this last year, it's really sort of translated into how you can make a business of it, how you can earn more money from it, how you can create more security from that ongoing upliftment in terms of your reputation and how people feel about you. And so it's like now you've built in a little bit more security and have got you've raised how you've thought about yourself. I do think the second house is about are we confident being ourselves? Do we value ourselves? Now you're at a higher level of valuing yourself. Jupiter's coming into this area of your locality, your community, your friends, your siblings, everyone that you encounter on a day-to-day basis, all the people you're in regular communication with, even like, if you work from home or if wherever you are at work, in fact, all the people that you are on a daily basis interacting with through your job. This is all the third house energy. So Jupiter here is bringing in a sense of faith, a sense of growth, definitely, possibly a sense of fame. So you may well be coming up. You might be getting a lot more attention. You might be feeling a lot more powerful. And it's likely to give you a sense of self-confidence. It feels like who you are, and other people now want to know who you are. Isn't it funny? As you say to yourself, yeah, I know who I am, all of a sudden the universe is kind of mirroring that back to you. Everyone else knows who you are as well. That's kind of cool. As a little aside, years ago, I went to live in Bali, in Indonesia, and I had this really strong sense of, God, I don't know anyone, and I really don't know who I am. What am I doing here? And the really weird thing was, for the first time in my life, I'd met people and they couldn't remember meeting me. And it was like people couldn't see me. I couldn't see me. So you've got the opposite going on right now, Aries ascendant. This forecast is really showing you that where you see yourself, where you are taking up space, where you are trusting yourself, where you are absolutely valuing yourself from your last and most recent interactions. What you've been doing is you've been raising your game slowly and steadily. Now Jupiter's coming into this very local but public part of your chart to show everyone else who you are. And then all of a sudden everyone else is saying, oh yeah, I see her. Yeah, I know that person. Oh my God, this person's great. So it's all coming back to you. It's like the more good feeling you can sow into your reality, the more of it is coming back. So, if you were to create a load of really positive statements about yourself, for instance, people trust me. And or if you put it into words that are about you, I trust myself. I deeply trust myself. I know I am completely trustworthy. I'm really responsible. People like me. I like me. Can you imagine, as Jupiter is going into this part of your chart, the amazing effect that's going to have when the universe cottons on and starts using your language, and all of a sudden people trust you, people deeply trust you. They really trust that you're the right person. This is raising your social capital in a huge way. Don't expect it to be quiet. It's likely to be quite noisy and have lots of invitations to different events and this, that, and the other. It is going to be busy. It's not one of these times where you're sat twiddling your thumbs, not knowing what to do. Now, you've got Pluto up here in the 11th, powerfully connecting to Jupiter at the time that Jupiter goes into Gemini. Now, Pluto is connecting from your 11th house, which is about your social capital at a much wider scale. Your social capital in terms of what are you co-creating with other people and what's your global vision right now. So there is more power when you include your global vision and your global community, and you're introducing it to your local community. When you are somehow bringing the ideas and learning from your global awareness into your local, that is creating so much strength. I was going to say stress then. It's creating so much strength that, again, this is also allowing you to go from strength to strength. This is really, really great. And then we've got this connection of this ongoing square. So Saturn's here in the 12th, in the sign of Pisces, and your Jupiter is here in the sign of Gemini in your third house. This is showing why, yes, you are rising up. There is a certain level of fame. You might be famous within your local community. It is rising you up for sure. And yet when it feels like you are trying to drive your car and you've got your handbrake on, really what's happening is Saturn is just digging his heels in a little bit. It's moving a little bit faster than your unconscious mind, which is very much about the 12th house, can keep up. And so where things are slow and where things are stodgy, it's because Saturn is behind the scenes trying to rewrite all the coding inside your unconscious mind. So that you have developed in this new way, your current level of consciousness because you're living in the reality of it, you're feeling it. And yet it's like your upliftment is also causing a little bit of stress and difficulty because Saturn behind the scenes can see the gap appearing between where you thought you were and where you now think you are. So it's like he's trying to bridge the gap. And that's why when things appear slow, it's giving you a chance to catch up with yourself. That the speed at which you're moving and the speed at which your unconscious mind can work through how to upgrade itself, they're just not working at the same speed. So if I was in your shoes, and there are some times when this square is coming in, but it's essentially in play between July 2024 until the end of February, and then from mid-April to July 2025. So it is in play pretty much for a year, almost like July to July, you could say, as a quick, snapshot of that energy. So there is this slowing down energy, and it's just so that you can fully catch up, so that your unconscious mind knows who you are. And it's building in place all the behaviors, underlying belief systems that you might need to be able to birth yourself here in this really quite exciting community setting that is going on for you. Now, where is this leading ultimately? Well, the next move that Jupiter makes will be in June 2025 when he goes into Cancer. And he'll be activating your 4th house. So, anytime one of these slower moving planets goes into the 4th house, it's quite significant. Jupiter going over this part of your chart can sometimes bring up the need to move. You've grown too big for your house. And so that might be the next move, is how can you feel comfortable in the home you're in? Is it still fit for purpose? So, as you're going through this kind of change in your status in this year ahead, it's really asking you to also think about what you're needing in the future. So you might already recognize that what's going on for you and the changes are going on for you, that you've outgrown your home, you've outgrown this part of the world that you're kind of living, breathing and existing in, and you might need to shift it over to the side a little bit. You might need something bigger, but there is a change in terms of how you're working and how you're appearing in the world. So all things to do with home and getting a greater sense of belonging. So you might realize that in this time of excitement, that where you are feeling the most of the deepest amount of belonging is in a slightly different area, and that's what gets your next move in planned in. So it wouldn't surprise me if something is shifting in terms of your home. But for where you are right now, this is exciting. This is moving you forwards, and it's really raising how people feel about you. So there you go. I hope that was helpful. Okay, so Taurus ascendant, how is this Jupiter movement into the sign of Gemini likely to manifest for you? Well, in the last year, Jupiter has been in your 1st house. Before that, he was in your 12th. So let's just go back a couple of years. So in 2022 to 2023, Jupiter was going through your 12th house. That's a bit like rummaging around in the dark, rummaging around in your attic or in your basement. And looking at your own unmentionables. Jupiter is expanding on your unconscious mind, and you may well have discovered some things about yourself that felt uncomfortable. The 12th house is full of projections, absolutely full of them, where there are uncomfortable truths that we can't quite, like we see them, we feel them, and then it's like, oh, I can't accept that. And it's like, okay, I must throw that out. So it will have been, or it could have been, a place of deep discomfort when Jupiter was going through there, because he was really kind of like looking under a cushion, finding an old pair of knickers and saying, who do these belong to? And it's like, put them away. So it's like, how can we hide the truth about us? How come? So I think Jupiter would have been uncovering things that you maybe didn't want to see about yourself. And then you've been thinking, okay, well, how do I come to terms with that? And then from May 2023 until right now, Jupiter has been in your first house. And so it's like, based on where you were in this last year, you've been coming to terms with who you are. You've been realizing a new sense of power in yourself, a new sense of determination. You might have found that you've put on a bit of weight. That sometimes happens as Jupiter crosses over this part. But it's about rebuilding your self-concept, rebuilding the new you. You know, there's an aspect of you that's probably changed in this whole Jupiter cycle. I mean, as far as Jupiter goes, I would say Jupiter going into your first house is one of the most significant positions for him. The others would be the 4th, the 7th, and the 10th. But, you know, for you right now, Jupiter has gone into your first. So it has rebuilt. It's been there about rebuilding your self-concept. And now it's coming into your second. And that is very much about realizing your true value. So what about yourself do you value? What about yourself do other people value? Are you doing something that feels like it's needed? There is a lot about how you are able to receive from people. So for instance, you know, a lot of us, you know, especially with like the Jupiter generosity, which, you know, is known about, Jupiter is a generous planet. You may well have, especially if you felt uncomfortable about yourself and what you see about yourself, you may have gone into one of those patterns of overgiving. Look, I'm such a nice person. I'm just going to give a bit more. I'm just going to overgive. Go on, just take it. But I mean, you wouldn't overfill your car. I mean, that'd be nuts. You know, what's really needed is what's required. And so you've probably been overgiving to give yourself a better sense of who you are. And so now Jupiter's in here. It's time to receive. And so how are you going to go from giving more to receiving more? It starts with how you feel about yourself. So Jupiter here is about really building your self-concept, rebuilding it, maybe destroying it, like unpicking it. If you realize that you can't receive things, you can't receive compliments, you can't receive love or favors without feeling the need to be completely reciprocal. So Jupiter's going to be teaching you something really strong here. But as it goes through this part of your chart, it is teaching you to be more yourself, your true self. And that is with the receiving and the giving. I've forgotten her name, Marissa Peer, a hypnotherapist you can find on YouTube. She talks about, you know, if you overgive, you run out of resources. Simple. You know, if you think of breathing, you breathe in and then you breathe out. But the breathing in is you receiving for yourself. But if you're always breathing out, let's see how long this lasts with me. Okay, I'm out of breath. So, you know, you have to take in a breath. You have to receive some love. And to do that, you have to be open to it. And this is where Jupiter is really great, because Jupiter is going to teach you trust. So you have to trust in yourself, but you have to trust other people. And to be able to trust other people, you have to hold them in a higher regard. And I think it's really hard to do that if you can't do that for yourself. So this could be quite a troubling time if you're going to fight Jupiter on it. But I really recommend that you don't fight Jupiter to be right about not being worthy enough. You know, this is really teaching you about your worthiness. Now, where this is going, if you get this right, you know, if you actually really allow yourself to build your self-value, and I don't think you can build your own self-value without recognizing the value of other people. I just don't think it works like that, that you put yourself on a pedestal but are casting other people down. That's just not going to work with the energy. But if you're able to genuinely love other people whilst also recognizing that you can do that because you love yourself, they do go hand in hand. The more you do that, you are setting yourself up for an even greater Jupiter and Cancer experience, where you should really feel the love and the cumulative sense of belonging as Jupiter comes through here. It feels like, wow, I really have met my tribe. I'm loved. I belong here. Can you imagine how powerful it would be to know that you really, truly belong somewhere and there's really great people around you? And to be able to do that, you know, it's really important to turn around your self-concept and see that everybody is absolutely doing the right thing. They're all doing the best that they can do, just like you are. And if you are trying to make you know, make your way in this world, then you can guarantee that other people are too. This is really unpacking and taking the whole work here that started 2 years ago into a much deeper acceptance. So there you go, Taurus ascendant. I hope that's helpful. Oh, I haven't finished. Let me just add in these bits. So yeah, in terms of how you receive more and recognize your true power and what you're able to achieve, interestingly, Pluto's already in your 10th house, and he's there to show that, you know, who you are, how you are seen in the public domain is really different. You know, it's changing. So, you know, this is also happening because your ideas of how you want to be seen in your local environment are changing. Now, with Pluto here in the 10th, it could be that you really want to be quite dominant. You really want to be quite seen and really understood in a powerful way. And you may well feel a lot of conflict if you can't control, which none of us can. None of us can control how people choose to think about us. And the more you try and control how people are thinking about you, the harder it's going to get. So the big transformation here is to, I think, give yourself a free pass and give other people a free pass. Recognize that you are powerful in your own right, and that you have a powerful purpose in being here. Recognize it's not your business to influence how people believe you to be. But as you are just being yourself with faith, with courage, and with a great sense of heart, people will see the true you. And that's really powerful. When you feel like things aren't working fast enough, it's also worth checking out Saturn's position in your 11th house. So Saturn in the 11th is, I think, describing a lack of reciprocity, which is what I've already spoken about, you know, where you are judging the people in your social connections, where you're judging somebody outside of yourself. Like the 11th house is about friends, but it's also about networks, people in your greater environment that you might be networked or connected with. You know, anywhere where you're being judgmental, that is holding back your self-concept. And it might be that you're not really ready to free yourself and recognize that you are a beautiful person, you know, and so you might be judging other people because actually what you're thinking about yourself is pretty ropey. So, you know, it's like the more you get comfortable with yourself, the less judgmental you will be around the people in your environment. And so you can use that as a benchmark. If you're not moving forwards fast enough, maybe you're holding on to some internal judgments about the people around you, which doubles back and shows you that you're judging yourself. So the quicker you can get to the core of what you're judging and who you're being, the quicker you'll move forward. So I hope that's helpful to you. Lots of love to you, Taurus ascendant. This is such a powerful Jupiter and Gemini message. And this, you know, I really hope this is helpful for you. So Gemini ascendant, wow, this is a great one. This is really interesting because you've got Jupiter in your own sign, in your first house. Jupiter coming into the first house. First thing I would say is, you know, if you're worried about your weight, then Jupiter does need you to let him know that, you know, like Jupiter, he really does bring up these good time feelings, and you know, the first house is about your body, and Jupiter is known to expand. So people often put on weight when Jupiter comes in, not just because Jupiter is expansive, but because Jupiter likes to have a bloody good time. So Jupiter likes cakes and sweets and all things that feel good. So, yeah, that's the first thing I would say. If you are concerned about your weight or it's something that fluctuates, Jupiter coming into this can make you get bigger. You know, it does give you a much bigger gravitational force almost. It just feels like you become bigger. Now, the question is, are you going to become bigger actually physically, or are you going to become bigger in your personality? Are you going to let yourself absolutely come into your power? Because this is what it's representing. It's strong. You know, Jupiter coming into this part of your chart is really strong. It's really helping you to recognize your power, recognize what you've dealt with, recognize who you are. You know, it's bringing you forwards. And it comes after a time when there have been some doubts about who you are and what you're capable of achieving. You know, Jupiter going through your 12th house before, from May 2023 right up until now, has been absolutely sort of unpicking any confidence that you've had in yourself. You know, just as you get to feel a bit relaxed or released about something, this old idea of who you were and a behavior or an old comment or an old situation flashes up in your mind. And it's Jupiter's bringing it up. Jupiter is the god of the sky. You know, he has a certain amount of influence over your consciousness, you know, and he's bringing up all this dark stuff so that you can let it go. You can bring it up, look at it, go, oh, wow, can't believe I'm still holding on to that. Recycle or repurpose or give it to someone else. Like, you know, if it's not your belief that you're holding about yourself, you might find that some of these ideas that you've got was other people's ideas about you that you've taken on. And Jupiter is just showing you and saying, go on, chuck that one out. So yeah, it has come at a time of discomfort. Before that, in fact, Jupiter was going through your 11th house, which would have most likely have brought in a really strong sense of how you can collaborate with others. And it probably moved you so fast that, yes, in this last Jupiter period, you've been, whoa, that changed me. That rose me up. Wow. Oh my God. And then there's this moment of crashing and thinking, yikes. Yes, I moved forwards quite considerably. And now I've had to recover, you know, because my unconscious mind, which is here, it needs to catch up with this new sense of who I am. So I do think, you know, Jupiter has been raising you up, rushing you to work with people. Then you've had the inevitable crash, and your unconscious mind is trying to come back into play. It's trying to kind of balance everything out. And now Jupiter's here. It's moving you forwards again, only with a renewed sense of who you are. Maybe with a slightly less enthusiasm. You know, Jupiter can be a little bit bombastic in the 11th house because there's a sense of confidence that can actually grow maybe outside of reasonable proportions. So you might have found yourself being really, really revered and loved and felt really great. But you know, if you're not believing it about yourself underneath, then, you know, Jupiter going through the 12th will have kind of helped to crash you. Now your sense of who you are is a lot more realistic, and it's allowing you to build something really great. Where this is going to go eventually when Jupiter goes into Cancer from June 2025, this is giving you more of a stability, you know, so you're realizing you're okay. You're realizing that maybe there have been times when you've been a lot more out there, and then you recognize that there's a lot of things that you want to shift, and now this is like the balance point. And so the next stage in your evolution and how you feel about yourself, in how you're rising up and how you're expanding, is to really have the trust and faith in yourself that everything is resourced. You know, the second house is about our personal resources. It's about our money. It's about, you know, is it easy to earn money? Do we trust that everything is coming in? Do we know that we can receive? You know, do we know that we will, like when good fortune comes our way, are we actually going to take it and be grateful for it? Or are we going to say, oh, no, you have it? So there is an element of trust in yourself to receive, trust in the generosity of others. You know, here you can be very generous. Jupiter in the first house is very, very generous. You know, we start to define ourselves because of our generosity. We say, oh, well, I've got plenty. Let me share some. I want to bestow this on you. By the time we come here, we realize that we need to have the in and the out. It has to go both ways, or else, we run out of steam. So this is coming up, and the more you can do to trust that you always have what you need, it will always come in. And if it's not coming in, if you're not having what you absolutely need, you might ask yourself, where am I resisting the good flow of abundance and good flow, good feeling, good karma, good connections? Where am I resisting life's good coming to me? Because that's where the action is. Last couple of things I want to share with you, and that is, there will be times over this next year when it slows down and it feels like that you're good, that things are happening and things are moving, and yet for some reason it's like there's the brakes on, and it's like, I don't understand why this isn't flying. Why hasn't this got wings yet? Well, that would be, I would say, the square between Jupiter and Saturn. And by their very nature, they have a very different energy. One is visionary, the other is planned. One is trusting, the other is using rules and regulations to put standards in place. So one is more carefree, that's Jupiter, and obviously Saturn is a bit more restrictive. So they're two different energies working in a square together in a frustration. Now, Saturn is in your 10th house. So that Saturn could be how you are in your career. Are you actually a little bit afraid? Are you like Saturn in the 10th actually is quite happy to go up in the world, to rise, to be ambitious and stuff, and yet it also protects itself. Saturn is very protective, and so you might find that you are doing great stuff, but you're putting so many boundaries and restrictions and rules and ideas and expectations on yourself as to how it has to happen. Because if it doesn't happen this way, you're going to be left wide open, and there could be some kind of, I don't know, international incident. So Saturn is helping you grow, but is also like stopping you. He's saying you can grow, but only if it happens like this. Whereas Jupiter in the first house is like, man, I'm growing, my persona is big, I feel great. And Saturn is shocked and horrified and thinking, you can't come into this career space, because if you come in with this wide open attitude, you're going to create some real tension. So what I see here is, where you're being restricted, it's because you're not feeling safe. You're not trusting in your ability to be able to handle everything that life wants to throw you. So you might choose to say to yourself, how can I trust in my ability to resolve any aspect of life in any moment? And ask yourself these big searching questions, gearing you towards opening up to trusting more. And then Saturn will, once he starts hearing these answers come up in your unconscious mind, he might say, oh, I didn't think of that. Oh, yeah, actually, you do have this under control. Okay, crisis averted. I don't have to be so tight. Now, at the same time, Pluto is listening into this conversation as well in your unconscious mind. And Pluto's saying, go get it. Let's do this. Let's do this. Like, Pluto in your ninth is there to transform your sense of how you fit in the world. And it's saying, the world is there. It's big. It's massive. There's loads of different cultural norms and opportunities. There's loads of different belief systems and blah, 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 blah. It's like, get out there. This is going to transform you, and you're feeling magnificent and big in yourself. So there's a lot out there that you can enjoy and expect to enjoy. And just when it's slow, it's because you're not trusting in the safety in life. So that's my big message to you, Gemini ascendant. I hope that's helpful. Cancer ascendant. So how is Jupiter going to be inspiring you? Well, it's an interesting one, because you're at the end of what feels like a cycle. Jupiter's coming into your 12th house now, and it's a place of reflection. I want to premise it that next year, from the 25th of from June 2025, Jupiter is coming into your first house, and whatever you're going through right now will kind of be cast aside. So it's like, if you think Jupiter is about your growth, your elevation, how famous do people know you in your area? Are you respected? How much authority do you have? And how much well-being do you have? So like this, Jupiter, as it goes through from our first house right the way round, it's taking us on a cycle of well-being, a cycle of growth, a cycle of influence, and a cycle of luck. You know, have you had that sense of well-being in the last 12 years? Have you known that life has got your back? Have you had the trust and the faith that, you know what, I've been around this block many times, you know, as many times as you have lived in multiples of 12 years. So, you know, yeah, I've had 4. The more we do it, the more we can trust that actually Jupiter does have your back, or life has your back. And, you know, the more optimistic and yeah, the more you just absolutely have it as a knowing, the easier life gets, actually. And it also corresponds with releasing some of your expectations. You know, if you want life to turn out a particular way and this is the only way it's going to happen, then you're probably not going to get that sense of well-being. So cut to the chase. 2 years ago, when Jupiter went into your 10th house in 2022, it would have created more of a sense of grandiosity, more of a sense of, oh my goodness, there's a possibility here. People are seeing me, people know me, people are quite interested in what I've got to say. It would have brought up a raising up of your status, and a feeling that you could actually achieve more than maybe you've thought in your lifetime. So that's quite nice. That's quite helpful. And that led in to this last year when Jupiter has gone through your 11th house from May 2023 to where we are right now. You know, Jupiter's been here. It's been highlighting the joy of collaborating. It's been bringing in lots of great people that we have a heart space with, that we trust with, that we can do a lot with. And it's created a greater sense of influence for you in the respect of maybe social media and other platforms. You know, it's helped you to be more seen and to have lots of great people want to connect with you. So it's great. Your influence would have really shot up quite considerably. And, you know, you've equated a certain amount of security to these connections that you've had. Now that Jupiter has come into this very hidden and private side of your chart, he's being a bit more reflective. So it feels like in the last couple of years, it's been non-stop and it's been really quite powerful, and you've been shifted quite considerably. And you realize that you've got security because of the people around you. And so I guess what's happening now is it's in the 12th house. Your intuition is being given, you know, a big expanding push, because our intuition is here in the 12th house. But also our doubts, our inner programming, and the things we keep hidden are hidden within this house. So you may well have found that you've got some belief systems about yourself whereby you think, I don't quite know how I pulled that off. And it's a good job these other people were here, because if it wasn't for them, that wouldn't have happened. You know, so you might have these underlying insecurities, and Jupiter's just going to be lifting them up so that you can see where they are. So it can be quite disturbing. And if you're somebody who has quite a psychic, a deep and psychic understanding, if you're somebody who dreams a lot, who has a lot of imagination, a lot of meditation time, you might find that Jupiter is bringing a lot more out. You know, he's really activating a lot of things. So for instance, any kind of way that you are in a meditative space, anywhere where you are contemplating, retuning, refining, rewinding and unpicking all of those things that you're noticing. Like, the more you notice these patterns, the more you've got the chance to do something with them. And the more you're engaging in that, the easier life will get. But it may well bring up some stuff that you're not ready to look at. And so that's the thing, you know, Jupiter here is, it's wanting to give you a bit of quiet time. You know, you've gone so far and so fast that now it's time to rest a little bit. Now, does that mean you're not going to achieve anything? No, it doesn't. Absolutely not. And so what I would maybe concentrate on doing if I was in your shoes, because next year from June 2025, as Jupiter comes through here, it's going to get quite busy really quickly. And it's almost as if you know so much more about yourself, and it's a bit more realistic. You know, it's based on this exploration. It's based on this sudden expansion. And then it's also got the reflection of it written into it. If anything, it's about the recalibration of going too fast, and then needing to crash a little bit. So you're in this kind of crashing phase. Now, obviously, that's not the complete picture of your life. This is just one aspect. Like in terms of how you're growing right now, actually, you're crashing for a moment. Now, where you are growing is in your intuition, in your dream state, in the power of your meditations, in the power of re-scripting your unconscious mind, anything to do with what's hidden and uncovering it and surprising and delighting yourself with it. That's all really, really beneficial stuff. What I actually see is going on is during this crash time, you could actually call it a reinvestment time, a secret reinvestment time. So to me, it's like you've gone on a retreat. You're going on a retreat that, you might be changing your diet and, changing some things behind the scenes. It's a secret one. This is a secret place. So it feels like you're just going into not the darkness, but you're just going into the side, just to see what's going on. You're quietly observing things and you're uplifting the feeling of well-being within your body. You're creating the scenario so that you can feel better, and kind of come to terms with all the rushing around. In the next portion of this, from June 2025, Jupiter's coming into the body. So he'll be creating possibly a bigness in your body. So you might get bigger, but he's creating a bigness in your identity and what people see as your image. So you're likely to be more seen, more well known, and you're likely to come like dancing onto dancing into your life. You're kind of re-announcing yourself. So I see this as like you're going for a makeover for a year. It's like a time of coming back into an appreciation for who you are. Couple of things to bear in mind. Pluto here is really working beautifully to unearth where you've got yourself locked up and stuck in yourself. Pluto and Jupiter are working in a beautiful trine. It's really giving you access to where you've taken other people's judgments on as your truth when they might not be. So Pluto and Jupiter here are going to deep dive into your unconscious mind if you choose to let them. So any form of counseling, coaching, or subliminal work, timeline therapy, things like that are really, really helpful. Things like tapping is really good. Any kind of somatic type thing where you're releasing everything that's trapped and stored is really, really helpful. And it's creating a sense of ease in your body so that when Jupiter does go in here where your body exists, he's not going to be going in to create a problem or increase the problem. Actually, he's going to say, great, you're already feeling free in your body. Let's see how we can create more freedom for you. So, a stitch in time saves 9, apparently. So it's that kind of energy. Now, this other placement here, this is Saturn and Jupiter. Now, they're going to be in a square pretty much continuously from July 2024 to July 2025. There is a bit of respite between the end of February and the beginning of April. But this square is going to be showing you why you might not proceed as quickly as you might want. So Saturn in your 9th is creating a sense of possibly judgment, and possibly restriction in how you are accessing things that are different to you. So, Saturn is making you very, very serious about philosophies, religion, politics, and is creating a sense of certainty, as in this belongs here, this is there, this is, so your belief systems on the world right now are being influenced in a very sort of fatalistic way based on Saturn's position here. And yet in your unconscious mind, Jupiter is saying, wow, actually anything is possible. And if I look at where I'm holding myself back, I can completely turn that around. So there is this new experience arising within you, this new sense of possibility. And at the same time, Saturn saying, don't go too fast. Don't do that. The world is actually like this. And if you were going to be sensible, you would see this. And Saturn is kind of censoring your experience. And Saturn might actually be the voice of the people that you listen to. So you may well find that Saturn is responding. He might represent the news outlets. He might represent government messages that you see via somebody sharing something on some other platform. And it just appears that there are all these ways that things should be, but that might not be true. And it might also be quite depressing. So if I was in your shoes over this next year, I think I would pay that a little bit of attention. It's okay to be aware of what might be happening, but don't allow Saturn's judgments to permeate your own, because then you're taking on somebody else's judgments rather than developing that critical thinking capacity in yourself. That, I think, is the true lesson. And here with Jupiter in the 12th, yes, there's this sense of great exploration and you can turn things around. But again, it's encouraging you to have a greater level of discernment. So I think any sticking point can be resolved through learning detachment, learning discernment, and learning to hear your true inner voice. So there you go, Cancer Ascendant. I hope that's helpful for you in the year ahead. Lots of love to you. And on to Leo rising or Leo Ascendant. So in this forecast, I'm looking at the position of Jupiter going into Gemini and what this means to you. Like, Jupiter is representing good luck, good luck, expansion, you're rising up, possibly how you are finding yourself a greater sense of well-being, a greater sense of belief, so your belief systems might be getting bigger as well. I mean, Jupiter is a really good opportunity for you. Now, I'm going to start it here actually in the sign of Aries. So back in 2022, when Jupiter was going through Aries until March 2023, when it went into Taurus, when it was in Aries, your way of seeing the world really could get expanded. And I imagine that in 2022, your eyes were like, bing, they were wide open. And you were like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. Whoa. Oh my goodness. So it's like the veil was lifted from in front of your eyes and you saw things with a whole new perspective. And no doubt it would have given you a real big zeal for communicating your ideas of what you've learned, so not only were you learning things, but you probably were in a space of sharing a lot of information as well and saying, well, did you know? And did you know? And did you know? Because, Jupiter has an authority, like we become the authority in the ninth house. And the interesting thing is when we're learning authority, we're learning things from other people and not doing it ourselves. We don't really know if it's true or not. And so one of the dangers of where Jupiter was in the ninth for you is that you might have learnt a lot of things that actually were harmful to you. You might have learnt things that weren't actually strictly truthful, but you took them on as truth. And so I guess one of the learnings from this time is just that you've got to be really careful about what you're taking in. Jupiter opens the door wide open, and the ninth house is a particularly open place where all sorts of ideas can come in and come out. And Jupiter on its negative could create a sense of arrogance and bigotry. So you might have got a new handle on what was going on in the world and then become a bit of a tyrant in your own right. So it would have given you quite a big sense of learning. And then it crossed into your 10th house. And now, the 1st, the 4th, the 7th, and the 10th, Jupiter crossing over any of these angles is important. So that would have created quite a shift in terms of your career and what you're expecting and the potential, sort of kept within your career, the idea of it. So, Jupiter going through the 10th would have created opportunities to expand, lots of new opportunities, lots of great contacts with new people. So it would have been a time of having a lot more trust and faith in your output and knowing that actually what I'm doing is important, what I'm doing can be seen, I'm supported to do what I want, because where Jupiter goes, it's showing you where you can trust and have faith and have confidence. So like you had the confidence and trust and faith to learn in yourself and learn about the world. Here it's asking you to have trust and faith and confidence about your output, about how you stand in the world. So maybe you became a bit more effective, you grew up a bit, and was also expanding, which is great. now Jupiter is here in your 11th house. And of course, you know, you've learned to speak a lot more articulately, and maybe you realize that maybe some discernment was needed, and yet you've learned how to talk and share and be of interest to people, which adds value. And then in this last year, you know, you've recognized that actually it's okay, your output is important and people can see you, and you're actually thinking, yeah, I'm happy to be seen. And now Jupiter's in your 11th house. Boy, is it going to be bringing in some creativity and collaboration. It's like you are absolutely drawing to you people that want to help, people that want to help raise you up, people that see your value and who want to collaborate with you because they can think of no finer reason for not doing it. You know, like they're just like, whoa, this is great. This person's great. I want to hang out with them. I want to work with them. I want to share with them. So really, Jupiter is here to help you create a global idea of who you are and to be part of a global, that there is something of the group, the network. It's like you are growing yourself into a network. You are expanding through a network, through the collaboration, through the collective. And it's really deep and it's likely to work really fast. Now, where this is all going, eventually, you know, in June 2025, Jupiter is going to clear off out of Gemini and head into the sign of Cancer. Now, this isn't, you know, in the 12th house, it can be a bit like, oh, God, there we go. Jupiter's now in my 12th house. Oh, God, what's going to be brought up? Because Jupiter does expand on things. But actually, if you're aware that what's going on right now is another really, really busy year after 2 years of deep change, actually where Jupiter was bringing you to in a year's time is, in just over a year's time, is into a place of peace where you can start to grow peace. You can start to grow comfort and connection. You can grow your intuition. You can grow grow a sense of well-being, but it's not from this place of razzmatazz. It's not from a place of who you know and how important you are and how important and spectacularly you are connected to people. This is absolutely about you growing peace in yourself. So it's also marking the end time and the start of a new Jupiter cycle. So, you know, where you are right now is you're almost in the final act of a Jupiter round. You know, this is a real culmination point, you know, where you've developed your ideas sufficiently and engaged people sufficiently that finally the true like beauty of it is being allowed to flourish right now. You know, people are coming to you, they're engaged to work with you, they're engaged to you know, do something with you that maybe is as yet unspecified, but you know, it's the vibrational connection that you're creating together. And so, yeah, enjoy it and recognize that you will probably want a break from it and come into yourself in just over a year's time, and just allow all that goodness to soak in and reprogram your mind. So as you start the next one, yeah, and you can see how this goes round and round now. Now, a couple of things to bear in mind. Pluto is here supporting you. Pluto's in the 7th house, really giving you some powerful habits with people and some powerful connections. There are powerful people coming into your life who are much bigger fish than you've ever encountered. And they are absolutely there wanting to collaborate with you. There's something that you're offering as well that they need. So you are definitely swimming with the right fish right now. Now, where you get held back is when the Saturn judgments that you were born into, I say born into rather than born with, because the 8th house is a house where other people's expectations can play into things. So this is a time now more than any other time in your life to absolutely be ready to edit any expectations that you're taking on as your own. I would double check. So when you think, oh, I've got to do this because, yeah, it's the right thing to do. The moment you hear something that sounds like it hasn't come from you, go, hang on, what? Back up the truck a bit. Hang on, what's going on? I'm going to do this because it's the right thing to do. Ooh, that sounds judgmental. I wonder where that came from. And then you're like, ooh, who do I know around me that says that? Ah, my mum. God. And then it's like this Saturn is absolutely playing out all these scenarios in your head, and it's giving you this like crash course in taking on other people's BS, taking on other people's expectations that are not helping you, and that is what slows you down, because it's getting you to not trust in your own experience, and it's kind of trying to scare you and protect you. I mean, it's ultimately there to protect you from making a wally of yourself. But, you know, here you're going to be in a very sort of exposed place, working very openly with people that want to collaborate with you. And of course, that could bring up some fear. And that's what Saturn's doing. He's trying to keep you safe. As probably your mum and all those people that have projected expectations onto you have been trying to keep you safe from their place of limited knowing. So that's the only thing that's going to hold you back. So really, when stuff like that comes up, just ask, who does this belong to? Return it back to them with a love and consciousness. So there you go. I hope that's helpful, Leo Ascendant. Enjoy the Jupiter in Gemini year. And stay in touch. Lots of love. Okay, so Virgo then. So let's have a look. This is obviously the Jupiter and Gemini forecast for you for the year ahead. Jupiter is going into Gemini on the 25th of May, 26th, 25th of May. In putting this into context for you, I'm going to go back a couple of years and then go forward a year as well, because I think that's going to be most useful to see Jupiter as part of the longer term story, because everything is a cycle and we're all part of a cycle. It's all endlessly fascinating to me, and I hope it is for you too. So in 2022, Jupiter was in the sign of Aries, which is, you know, representing the start of the new Jupiter cycle. You know, went into Aries, and it's very much about bringing you into a new appreciation of who you are against the boundaries of other people. You know, so the 8th house is a place where lots of people are judging us, and we are judging ourselves in terms of how we are going through life, like all the aspects of life, birth, life, and, you know, all the right the way round. And so this was about how you could become more independent and see yourself as separate from some of the maybe unfair expectations people had on you. And then Jupiter went into the 9th house, where things could get really quite big. I mean, your ideas on who you are and what you believe have likely changed a lot. You know, Jupiter represents belief systems, politics. In the 9th house, you've got philosophy, spirituality, publishing, sharing information, learning a higher context, and then going and teaching it and sharing it. There's a really strong dissemination phase. And Jupiter coming into this part of the chart can sometimes make you learn so much, and you learn it with such a strong sense of authority that you might actually become a bit arrogant or a bit of a tyrant. You know, Jupiter in this position can make us very, very certain that we are right about, you know, X politics or Y spirituality or whatever. You know, it can make us absolutely convinced of our authority and our sense of knowing. That's at a really almost savage level. But, you know, mostly what Jupiter's doing is absolutely creating a sense of adventure for you, where your eyes are opened in a whole new way, in a way that you've never expected before. And it's like, whoa, this is really cool. So you get really excited, and it can be very, you know, a very enthusiastic time for you. But it's always, you know, worth checking in and thinking, did I go too far there? But now Jupiter is coming into the 10th, and it's based on what you've just been learning. So you may well feel really quite confident, because the way you see the world, the way you see what is right, what is wrong, and inner morality and your spirituality, the chances are you've gone through quite a development. You know, if you think back, let's go back those 2 years again. First of all, in 2022, you were learning to have confidence to make up your own mind about yourself, and you were really saying to other people, no, I'll be the judge of that, thank you very much, I'm not going to put these expectations on myself just because you say I'm being like this. No, I'm working this out for myself. And then, last year until just recently, you have been working out for yourself. You've been learning and studying and deep diving and talking to people from different walks of life, and a new picture has emerged. And so it's with that picture that you're going into your 10th house. Now, obviously, if your politics and your religion and everything that you know to be real for you in your life has turned around and expanded, how is that going to make your work different? I mean, I think anytime my reality shifts, my work shifts. It's impossible, because of the way I work. It's absolutely linked in. And I think for a lot of people, especially if you're a creative person or working very closely with people, when your worldview shifts, everything shifts. So there is a new energy coming into your career, into the part of where you're where all of your outputs are, so everything you're working on and everywhere that you're being recognized, seen, where people might be grateful for you, where people might be paying you, where people might be sharing your good reputation or helping to define your reputation. It's shifting because of who you are now. And Jupiter here could really rise you up quite big. And that could be brilliant, if Jupiter is rising you up and your reputation is increasing in a positive way, that can be really, really good. If maybe your views have been seen and people have reacted strongly to it, people might be using this time as Jupiter comes here to kind of put you down publicly. So it's worth paying attention to how you seem in this position, not so that you become a judger of yourself, like you were being judged in 2022 by your family and people in your sort of closest remit. But right now, this is just one of the possible downsides, but it's mostly upside. This is about you finding a greater sense of yourself, a greater sense of expansion, a deeper trust that you've got everything you need to be able to flourish and to be able to produce something really great in this world and be recognized for it. I think that trust and that confidence speaks volumes. It's great. In fact, Jupiter really wants to be in this position. And right now, Pluto is helping. Pluto is transforming the way you organize your life so you can actually get more done. Pluto is also changing how you think about the organization of your life. So you haven't just gone through this great big mind shift here, but you've also been questioning, well, how is it I have my life like this anyway? Like, what was the purpose of that? How does that fit in? And so, yeah, your life is being redesigned, and that's having a really positive effect on how you're applying it in terms of your output and your career and your reputation. Now, one thing to bear in mind, and that is your attitudes towards partners. Like Saturn is in the 7th house right now, and Saturn's going to be in a square with Jupiter for most of the year. And during that time, Saturn could very well try and dissuade you of your powerful position. When Saturn goes through the 7th, sometimes we notice that our friends start to get really negative. Now, is that true? Or is it just that you've just gone very positive and by comparison, everyone else seems negative? It's quite possibly that you are so bright and changed and transformed that everyone else in your life just seems a bit dull and a little bit tight, a little bit sticky, a little bit not quite as free and liberated as you. So, one of the things to bear in mind is you're running forwards and you're excited, and yet the people around you are slow, a bit distrustful, a bit skeptical, and they're asking you big questions like, why is this so important to you? And it's like, God, you're such a buzzkill. So that's one thing to bear in mind with this is, how can you recognize that the people in your life maybe aren't trying to kill your buzz, but they're just trying to come round to this new you that's presenting yourself. So anywhere where you're finding the people around you are, I don't know, somehow damaging you from moving forwards, can you begin to unpick, is it just that they're being unreasonable, or are you moving so fast that, you know, it's really hard for them to catch up? You know, what might be useful is if you're able to help them come to, you know, help give them time, give them space, give them support so that they can make their own minds up without feeling like the dullard in the group, you know? So I don't know. To me, it feels like whilst you're on this beautiful and brilliant path, it is still worth investing in the people around you. I do think they still care about you. And by default of your changes, they now appear very dull and possibly a bit negative and possibly a bit judgy. And you might also find that they're just acting in the way of your unconscious mind. You know, they're saying, and you're hearing them say maybe what a part of you would be saying if you were listening. And you might also ask yourself, where am I not listening to myself so much so that other people are telling me what I need to hear? So it's worth just bearing all of that in mind as you proceed, because this is a time of great development for you, without a doubt. Last thing I want to share with you is where you are right now is pivoting you into a much more connected vision. So if you can learn to completely trust in the faith of what you're going through, and also recognize that the people around you are reflecting a hidden side of you that maybe you're not able to see, you know, the more you can find balance there, the better off you'll be here, because from June 2025, Jupiter is rushing in and expanding and getting people to co-create with you, collaborate with you, and expand your global vision, expand your vision of how you fit in with the rest of the world. There's something so big coming, and it's likely to be quite quick. It's likely to move very fast. So yeah, I see this as a very interesting progression time for you, Virgo. And yeah, sending you lots and lots of love. I hope it goes well. Bye for now. So on to Libra ascendant, and this is obviously the Jupiter and Gemini forecast for you. And what I want to do is kind of detail through a bit more of, or unpack, I guess, the Jupiter life cycle that you've been living through. So if we go back even to 2022, Jupiter came into your 7th house, is in the sign of Aries, and it was absolutely showing you how anything to do with relationships was emphasized, partners, new people coming into your life. Now, Jupiter is great because Jupiter brings a feeling of goodwill. It brings in a feeling of optimism and hope, and also duplicity and multiplicity. So lots of people coming in. You know, for people that are single, it's often quite a good time because you meet really great people. So it's about expanding and enhancing your partnering. You know, how did you experience more of the other within your life during that time? Now, immediately after, Jupiter came into the 8th house. Now, the 8th house can be a bit of a problematic house. You know, it's a place of other people's values, in the same way as the 2nd house is about how you earn money and also about how you value yourself. The 8th house, which is opposite to the 2nd, the 8th house is about how other people value you and about how other people make money. So it's very much a place of other people's earnings. So things to do with your partners and their assets and shared assets between you, but also their value systems. How do they impinge on your life and your living? So I think things like expectations come up during that time. And so you may well have found up until very recently, so from May 2022 to May 2023, that Jupiter here was bringing up a lot of possibly inflammation, a lot of expansion into shared ownership of things and an exploration, so things would have come up about your partner's assets, anything that you had shared with other people. And, Jupiter can bring up that feeling of hope that you can get to the bottom of this and that you can create an opening with it. Jupiter here also shows that anything to do with other people's expectations on you became a lot more apparent. So it's one of those places where you can really deep dive into maybe what's going on. And also a time when you maybe took on a lot of expectations from other people. And hopefully by the end of this transit with Jupiter, you've learned a level of how to be at peace with other people's visions and values and how they impact on you. Jupiter is about feeling good and at some level mastering the energy of it. So as Jupiter is now coming into Gemini, what I really see is there's this energy of growing freedom. Jupiter is naturally aligned to the ninth house energy, and Jupiter in the ninth is like a kid on Christmas Day. It's like all these toys, all these possibilities, all these new horizons. So here I think Jupiter is coming in to show you that your life is much bigger than what you immediately thought life, the size of life, in terms of your partners. Life is infinitely bigger than even what your partner thinks your life is, because that's about their values. So what I see is that through your experience of partnerships and then the experiences of how your partners have almost rubbed off their expectations onto you, how you've been living in the expectations of your partners and family and people close to you. Now it's the time for you to shrug off any of the responsibilities that you might have assumed and to feel free and to move very freely in life. And so Jupiter here is about growing your experience beyond where you felt trapped within the value systems of other people and maybe within the shared assets that you have with people, because all of these things are trappings, all of these little interactions and things that bring value to our life also trap us in it. So Jupiter here is bringing you to a greater sense of freedom. Now, during this time, you are likely to come up with your own judgments because the ninth house is full of judgments as well, but of a different nature. Here Jupiter really excels and wants to explore all new spiritual paradigms, religious paradigms, political paradigms, international paradigms. It's all about a new knowledge, a new deepening, a new breadth that you can explore life through. Now, Jupiter can be a big bore. So here we could get the intellectual bore come out. So that's one thing to watch out for with this transit, is that you don't get so certain of where your new curiosity has taken you, because when we do get that certain, we can become very verbose and say, this is how it is. And I know this because I've researched this. And actually, it's still the same situation as ever, which is we all have an opinion. We all have an opinion based on our research and our exploration. And who is to say whose truth is the correct truth? So this is a time where how you see the world and how you explore and interact with the world is much bigger and much more full of possibilities. And yet we can still fall into the same traps of getting into judgment. And that's one thing to be aware of. Now, where is this moving to? The next movement from Jupiter will be to go into the sign of Cancer, where it's exalted. That's in June of 2025. Where all this is shifting is taking you into a place of culmination, a place of achievement, a place of recognition, a place where your career can really take off and where you can feel completely seen and acknowledged, and quite possibly in a very public way. So Jupiter, as he is moving through and expressing his story, what he's showing you is that as your vision of the world is expanding, it is also preparing you for a much greater sense of responsibility. So it might be worth having that in the back of your mind as well. Now, ultimately, we've also got these aspects here. So we've got Jupiter in a trine to Pluto. So here's Pluto down here and here's Jupiter. It's fairly short-lived, but it's still very, very strong. And it's coming in literally just as Jupiter is moving into the sign of Gemini. Now, this aspect is really there to support you to grow. really to support you to grow. And Pluto is in the 5th house in the sign of Aquarius for you, really showing that you're being transformed in terms of your creativity, and you're being transformed to consider what brings you joy. And that when you're focusing on what's bringing you joy, it is absolutely also working to make you more curious and to get you to see a much bigger possibility for yourself. So it's like the more you're creative, the more you're allowing yourself to go deeper into the creative process, the more you are getting from your Jupiter in the 9th house. That's really, really helpful. Now, the other aspect that is really playing into this Jupiter transit in the sign of Gemini is the square to Saturn. Now, this square is pretty much in effect from July 2024 to July 2025. It does take a little bit of time off at the end of February, right through to the beginning of April. But even though it's not quite in the square, they're still in square signs to each other. So this set of 3 squares that's coming up between Jupiter and Saturn is pretty strong, and it's likely to create a feeling of frustration. Now, but where is this frustration coming in? So, Saturn is in the 6th house, which is encouraging you to consider how you're working and how you're organizing your life. So Saturn here is saying, you need to have a routine, you need to do this, you need to do that. And when you do this, you'll have a great life. Well, that's not necessarily true. It appears so. It appears like a truth, but is it really? Saturn is trying to get you to really be regular, and to pay your bills on time, and to be very, very typical in the way you are wired, the way you think. And yet Jupiter here in the 9th house is saying, be wired any way you want, so this is like being neurotypical, and this is being neurodiverse, I guess we could say. Saturn is really wanting you to knuckle down, and Jupiter is wanting you to blow it off. So these are the 2 dynamics that are playing out throughout the course of this year. So you might think, okay, well, what can I get from the Saturn message to knuckle down and to have some regularity? And where do I need to ensure my Jupiter in the 9th doesn't take over? This is a balancing act. If you go too far into the Jupiter side and get very hedonistic, which is totally possible in the 9th, then the Saturn function is going to really pull you back like a sharp whiplash action. So, I would say allow yourself to progress, and also pay some attention to the inevitable things that we all have to do. Just be aware that when you get out of balance one side, you're going to get moved back. Now, I would also say it's important to consider what was happening in the summer of 2012. That was the last time that Jupiter went into the sign of Gemini. And the time before that was the summer of 2000. So if you can think back to what you were doing in the summer of 2000 and 2012, that will give you another additional context that this is taking place at. So I hope that's helpful for you, Libra and Ascendant, and have a great transit. And if I can be of any help, you know where I am. Lots of love. So we are moving on to Scorpio Ascendant. Now, this is really to have a good think about how Jupiter is likely to be affecting you and us, because I've also got Scorpio Ascendant. I think I say that every single time, don't I? It's not like you don't already know. So how are we going to be reacting to this Jupiter in Gemini energy? I always think it's good to assess how it's been playing out previously. So if we go back to 2022, Jupiter was in the sign of Aries, and it was really exposing where we had these large gaps in how we organized our life, and also really bringing up some thoughts and feelings about our health. And so it was really encouraging us to consider our life a lot more concisely, encouraging us to create better habits. However, Jupiter, in the way that he does, tends to grow things. So you might have found that during this time you were just insanely busy, that your workload rocketed up, and probably quite indiscriminately so. You may well have found that you took on this, and this, but didn't have the discernment to slow it down. You may well have just worked yourself into a sort of blubbering wreck. Also, your health features in the 6th house. And so one of the things about that is that if we overdo it, which Jupiter has a tendency to do in terms of health, you may well have found that you were just paying for your health on the never never. You were just spending so much time taking out of your, if you imagine like you have a health bank balance, you were probably making withdrawals in terms of your energy and not really depositing any good in there. I suspect that you were working too hard and bringing so much in that it was actually quite difficult to manage. Now, you may well have found that there were some inspired and fun ways of doing things, and you might have also decided, okay, some of those values that I've got for myself, I'm going to have to let those go. So, the Jupiter energy is also quite good at letting go of some things as well, if things maybe seem a bit too hard. So you might have also found that during this time, any hope of living in an organized manner, you might have just said, okay, well, actually, it's depressing me more than it should. Let's let this go. This isn't helpful. So I do think you would have learned a lot of stuff. And then in this last year, from May 2023 right up to current date, with Jupiter in the sign of Taurus, in your 7th house, the interesting things would have been the people in your life. So you may well have found that any difficulty with people in your life, and to be fair, you've already got Uranus going through here. Uranus has been here for a really long time. So the people in your life that have brought in a little bit of chaos, possibly a bit of destruction, possibly a lot of change, and possibly in a way that you're not quite ready for. As Jupiter came in here, I think, those people would have brought more change to you. And you might have found a way to be at peace with it. You might have thought, oh my goodness, there's nothing else I can do about this, so I might as well join them. So I really think with Jupiter here, there's been, in this last year, you've come to terms with the craziness in your life and the people that maybe are bringing in these crazy solutions. And rather than try to make them wrong and try to get them to see your point of view, you just now realize that actually it's time to just let people be who they are, completely be who they are, and then to just have some fun yourself, like really take responsibility for you having fun and for you being this person that has well-being and for you having this sense of independence. So I think it's enhanced the Uranus energy in the 7th house, where your partners and friends have been so individualistic and so changing. It's encouraged you to let yourself off the hook a little bit. And Jupiter has just gone in and really encouraged that. You may also have found or noticed that more exciting people have been coming into your world. And Jupiter is just really emphasized that. And, from these people, from these contacts, you may well have also found that Jupiter is rising you up because of the contacts you've got. Remember, Jupiter is there to raise your game somewhat and to give you a sense of authority. Now, that's not to say that you've got authority over people necessarily, but he's raising you up so that you are seen, you are an authority in your own right. So I think your social capital will have increased during this time. Now we're at this point where Jupiter is going into the 8th house, and the 8th house isn't a comfortable house to have it go through. The 8th house has a few pitfalls, but it's also very good. So the 8th house, it's about from birth to death. It's the whole life cycle. So it looks at the rites of passage that we all go through, whether we are going through puberty, becoming a young person, maybe getting into a relationship for the first time, and so on and so forth. There are all these different stages we naturally go through. So there is some element of possibly coming to peace with one of these processes that you're going through, the life changes you're going through. Maybe you're expanding into it. Maybe you're deciding to accept and to bring a certain kind of wisdom, a certain kind of sense of fun, which Jupiter has, into your new life circumstance. So that could be quite useful. But Jupiter also looks at things like shared ownership of things. So if you think Jupiter's been in the 7th house, where it's been looking at, the people in your life. And if you think the 1st house is followed by the 2nd house, this is you, this is your values and your resources. So here, this is everyone else. These are your partners. And here, these are your partners' values and resources. So you might find with Jupiter here that lots of people project onto you because their values of you will be more prominent. Jupiter is making it so. So you may well find that your new raised social capital also brings you a new situation of other people's values and expectations being put on you. So the big question that I absolutely advise you to hold on to this whole period is, that's interesting. That's an interesting point of view that you have about me. And then think, who does this belong to? You know, really ask yourself, is this opinion that someone's just put on me, is this actually going to help me? Or is this just to make them feel better? Who does this shame belong to? Who does this embarrassment belong to? Who does this resentment belong to? Is it really my responsibility to carry this? Or is this just somebody kind of sounding off and projecting onto me because of their own sad or sorry or upset or maybe blind state that they're in? You know, maybe they're not seeing the impact of their words. So I would be aware of that as a possibility, because how you handle it from word go is how you'll carry on with it. So if you take it all to heart right at the start, it's likely to floor you. It's likely to really capture your energy in quite a strong way. And the moment you start to take control of that, the moment you start to realize other people might be putting their values on you and it could affect you at a psychic level, almost, you know, like the 8th house, I think, is, if there was a house that carried generational curses or things that you might have karmically, I would say the 4th, the 8th and the 12th are the ones that carry it. The 8th in particular, because if you think of the 8th and the star sign that might rule it, typically you think of the Scorpio energy, which is the 8th sign. And obviously you've got a feel for the Scorpio energy because you've got Scorpio ascendant. So this particular part of your chart is really quite hidden. So you may well get these hidden attacks that are seemingly well-meaning advice, and it's very difficult to manage that. So get clear with this right from the start as a way of managing the energetics. And so when somebody is saying something to you, just say, that's an interesting point of view. It's your point of view. And secretly say, is this something for me? If it's not, let it go. Just give it back with, you know, mentally or verbally, but give it back with love and consciousness. Let it go. And then let them deal with their own feelings, because that's all it is. It's somebody else's point of view. Now, similarly, other people's values and resources may well have a stronger interaction with you. So your partner might have some extra things to deal with financially, you know, maybe tax situations, or I don't know, things that need to be resolved, and they might impact on you. Your partner may well come into some money. So for instance, like the 8th house is very much about death and dying and the end of one life and the start of a new. So things may well come into your doorstep, into your realm of being through your partners. So it's something to just be mindful of. You know, don't be too surprised if the stuff that is coming for you and grabbing your attention is really through your partner's experience. So yeah, this is interesting. Now, where is this leading? See, this is where I'm always thinking, how is this leading me further? So if we think about it, we've been reviewing how busy we are. We've had a lot of busyness. Then we've had a lot of craziness from our partners and a lot of well-being coming up with that. We've decided to get crazy with them. And now we are possibly coming into a time when we're more visible and potentially other people are putting their stuff on us. And the 8th house is also very deeply personal. You know, this is a place where we are going through life changes, possibly accepting where we are in those life changes, taking responsibility for it. It's a very psychological house. This could be a really good time. This could be a time when you actually let go of some of the inner psychology that's held you in knots for years. You know, Jupiter does help us see a different perspective. It does create curiosity for possibilities. So hold out for that one. That's a great possibility, isn't it, to let go of stuff? But where this is going in the 9th house, when Jupiter comes into the 9th house, which is absolutely where he's happy, the 9th house energy, when it goes into, Jupiter in Cancer in June of 2025, this is bringing you to a whole new place of freedom. So any stuff that you're dealing with now, know that the more you let it go, the more you can accept it and maybe even find a sense of humor about it. the more freedom you're going to experience from June 2025, because that's when Jupiter is really going to open up all the avenues of deep adventure and possibility and learning and mastery and mentorship. You know, Jupiter is naturally going to be on the top of his game from there. So if the development you're going through seems a bit too onerous during this time, please know that it's leading you to somewhere really fantastic. I don't think it has to be onerous. It could actually bring quite a lot of money, a lot of wealth. In fact, people with Jupiter in this area can sometimes, you know, if it's there natally, they can actually really profit from their associations with people. So it swings and roundabouts. Now, there are a couple of aspects that are helpful. So Jupiter in a trine to Pluto here is showing deep transformation at home. Now, Pluto coming into this part of the chart can be quite traumatic. You know, it's not always that easy. Pluto in the fourth is bringing great change, sort of great ruptures in the fabric of your family and how your home life is. So no doubt you've been noticing, you know, a sense of restlessness, a sense of things have to change. And actually Jupiter here in the eighth house, obviously the changes you might be going through at home will have a lot to do with the values of your partners and how open and honest your communication can be. So one of the deepest of possibilities here is an enhanced sense of working things out together, that you can connect powerfully. And in fact, that your relationship together can really transform something quite amazing. Now, the other thing to also bear in mind is we've got Saturn here in the fifth in a square to Jupiter pretty much for a whole year. And if you want to know more about that, look at the part one. But, you know, Saturn here in the fifth could be bringing up extra responsibilities from your children. You know, the fifth is about your creativity, but also your kids. And so Saturn can sometimes create heavy responsibilities. You might find that there's a lot more to do with your children or they need a bit more support. But similarly, you might find that if you're a creative person, you've taken on more than you can chew. You've bitten off more than you can chew. Your creativity is actually like a burden around you. You've done too much. Maybe overpromised, and now you fear you're going to underdeliver. But here, this Saturn is squaring this energy. So you may well find that between what you've set about as a responsibility and then the responsibilities that other people are putting on you, it just feels like there's no escape. So watch out for that. What I would say ideally is think back to what was happening in 2000, the summer of 2000 and the summer of 2012, because that was marking the time when Jupiter last went into the sign of Gemini. What was happening to you? What extra focus was coming up for you? So anyway, I hope that's helpful for you, Scorpio ascendant. And yeah, lots of love to you and speak to you real soon. Bye for now. Okay, so we're on to Sagittarius ascendant now. So if you've got Saggy ascendant, this is, you know, your ruling planet. So Jupiter is going into the seventh house, which is interesting because he's in his detriment in the sign of Gemini, as you'll probably know. You know, he's naturally happy in the sign of Sagittarius, and he's got a real natural joie de vivre. He's got a natural spring in his step when he's in the ninth house. But right now he's in the seventh in the sign of Gemini. So how's this going to play out? Well, the first thing I would say is think back to what you were doing in the summer of 2000 and also the summer of 2012. That was where Jupiter was at those times. You know, he was going into the sign of Gemini, and whatever was going on at those times will give you a bit of a flavor for it. So if you can think that back that far, think, you know, what was going on? How was I expanding? How was I getting a greater sense of well-being during that time? And that will give you a real good clue right from the get-go. Now, let's add in a bit of extra context. So if we go back to 2022, Jupiter went into the sign of Aries, and it was all about your creativity. So there was a sense of ideas coming up for you. You know, there was a real strong sense of a new way of doing things, a new focus, and possibly a lot more fun in terms of children, a lot more fun in terms of your creativity. To me, it feels like there was something that really came up during that time that made you think, yeah, this is me. This is my individual contribution. This is what my passion is. This is where I'm going to go. So Jupiter would have brought up a lot of ideas, a sense of confidence to create whatever it is that you wanted to create, a sense of birthing. And it would have really brought into being this sense of wanting to do it yourself, very much that you're the creator, nobody else, it's your creation. Now, when Jupiter went into the 6th house, Jupiter would have then been trying to fit into your schedule. And the chances are, if you did this creativity thing really well, that by the time Jupiter came into the sign of Taurus, which was May 2023 to where we are right now, Jupiter would have brought up a lot of extra work for you. You know, the 6th house is where we work. It's how we organize our house, our finances, and our health. So you may well have found that you've created so much stuff for yourself that actually now you're feeling really overburdened. So it wouldn't surprise me if that was what's been playing out for you in your life. This sense of, oh my goodness, the burdens of being me. It's, what's my creativity done? You know, how did that occur? So, you know, during this time, you'd have had to let go of some things, realize actually for my own sense of well-being, you know, my schedule is too much. I can't manage my home. I can't manage my health. I can't manage my finances because I've created too much for myself. You know, Jupiter is a too muchness. And so now Jupiter is in the 7th house for you. And what you're now experiencing is how to experience the too muchness of Jupiter through the lens of other people. So you may well find that the people in your life are bringing you a lot of things. You might also get the feeling that the people around you are experiencing too much. So you might find that the people in your life are really quite chaotic. They're going through a lot of change. They're going through a big aggrandization, you know, like they're getting bigger, more powerful. So don't be too surprised by this if, as the people around you are expanding and getting bigger and bigger and bigger and seemingly really stepping into their power, and also having a better sense of well-being, that also rubs off on you, that you are encouraged to become a bigger person, a more generous person, a more expanded person. Because obviously who we hang with, who we are experiencing life with, they are really determining what's new for us, you know. So I really see that our creation has brought us into a very busy phase and created this sense of I need to let some things go. And it's funny because to the extent that we've let things go, we've created more space for great people to come in. Of course, if you haven't let anything go, it's very difficult for new people to come in and find you and reach you because you're too busy. So my possibility for you with Jupiter in the sign of Gemini, I would say, is if there are things you haven't already let go of, let them go now, because great people are likely to come into your life. And especially if you're single and wanting to meet somebody who is going to light you up and absolutely turn your world around, and you're really open to that happening, then this is the time to be open to possibilities. And by open, I think it means letting go of stuff that's not really creating the life you want. So how do you know what to let go of? I mean, obviously you can't let go of your bills and things like that. And, you know, your house, like you don't want to let go of things that are bringing you good, but you might look at the things that you've got going on and say, okay, I recognize that the way I'm living and all I'm doing to maintain that level of security, it's actually overkill. I'm doing too much. Let's kind of taper back on this and actually function on the things that bring me joy. If you are finding yourself in a real feel-good state where you are focusing on your joy, focusing on the things that are really changing your life, then it's going to bring the vibration of life-changing people into your world. If you're really focusing on the feeling of managing your life, you're likely to bring in people that are going to want to manage your life. So, you know, really consider where your vibration is at, because Jupiter, again, it's your ruling planet. Now, where is this moving eventually? Well, it's taking you into Jupiter and Cancer, which is interesting because Jupiter and Cancer shows what those relationships are yielding. It shows a deepening of those relationships. So again, there's another great message that this could be a time when you really meet someone significant, because you know what comes next is the deepening of the experience. Now, obviously, the deepening of that experience can bring quite a bit of trauma and difficulty with it, because as we get to know people deeper, we also get to see their shadow sides. But think of it this way: you don't get to see somebody's darkness if you don't get to know them closely. So it's a time when we start to take our masks off and we start to see each other's inner psychology, and that takes a lot of trust. And of course, Jupiter is all about trust and understanding and having a great feel. So, you know, this is all working you in the right direction, I would say. Now, an extra thing to consider, Jupiter is in a trine to Pluto as he goes into Gemini, and you know, definitely until the 7th of June, he's really in a tight square with Pluto within less than a degree of orb. So this is very beneficial. This trine is very powerful. So you may well find that the best people are coming from the community. So for instance, the best ways for you to expand are not these self-generating ones. These are these where you are called from somebody within your community, from somebody in your network, from somebody that you've worked with because of a shared interest, for instance. The third house is full of shared interests. Anywhere where you have had a shared interest and you've worked with people, you know, keep a real close look on these guys, check in with them, find out how they're doing, because this is where the opportunities are coming. You know, so I really think the more you're within your community and the more open you are to meeting the right people, the greater the chance of your life being turned around in that Jupiter sense that rises you up quite suddenly and in quite beautifully. Something else to consider is the square that's taking place from July 24 pretty much all the time until July 2025, with a slight exception. It eases off at the end of Feb until the early April. But apart from that, that square is pretty much the whole time. So this square, you've got Saturn in the 4th and Jupiter in the 7th. So Saturn in the 4th is actually getting you to be a bit leaner at home, you know, really work out how you want to live, and consider that there are some things to resolve at home, some better process that you can develop at home. I would say that when Jupiter was in the 6th, it's probably brought up a lot of chaos and a lot of big stuff. And so now it is really definitely the time to use a bit more discernment at home and make sure that comes in. So you'll find yourself getting pulled back into the home quite sharply to get everything in order. And yet right now, really, you just want to be having fun with friends and collaborating and doing anything that just feels good. So I hope that's helpful for you, Saggy. Lots and lots of love to you in this coming Jupiter and Gemini period. And yeah, have a great time. I see some really cool stuff happening for you. Okay, so on to Capricorn ascendant. How are you doing? So Capricorn, this is where your ascendant is. Jupiter right now is just going into the 6th house. Now this is a place that needs a little bit of a mindful, watchful eye on it. And Jupiter, it's like almost having, you know, like if you've got an au pair. And you're wanting your life to be organized, and you might think of somebody like Nanny McPhee. I don't know if you've seen that film. Or you might, like if you were choosing an au pair, you might choose one that's going to do the housework and get everything sorted. But actually, that the au pair that you get is the Jupiter type, which is Mrs. Doubtfire, who brings a lot of chaos, a lot of color, and a lot of big opportunities, a lot of slapstick fun and this, that, and the other, but doesn't necessarily bring order. Does bring a feel-good feeling into your life, though, into your world. So this is the kind of description that I would give Jupiter in Gemini in your 6th house. So you might choose to relax your ideals as to how things need to be at home. That could be quite helpful because, just in this next year ahead, things are going to be moving really fast. And if you've got very strong ideals as to how things need to be and need to work, you might miss out on some opportunities. So that's the first thing I just want to share with you. Now, another way of looking at Jupiter going into Gemini for you would be to consider, what were you doing in the summer of 2000 and the summer of 2012? Because they were the last two times that Jupiter went into Gemini. So how was your life evolving? Were you organized? Was there too much going on? If so, what were the hallmarks of what you were doing during that time? It's worth really bearing that in mind. Now, I also think it's worth seeing the story of how Jupiter is evolving in your life. So in 2022, Jupiter went into the sign of Aries, which was in your fourth house. So Jupiter would have been looking at expanding how you were living, possibly bringing new people in to live in your home with you. There would have been a new concerted effort to have more fun at home, to be more lighthearted at home, to be more trusting at home. There's a real sort of feeling of lightheartedness. Jupiter coming in the fourth, it's a place where the home is where the heart is, really, truly. Jupiter warms everything up and creates a lovely feeling of trust and openness. I would say they are hallmarks of the Jupiter energy. Now, then in May 2023, up until right now, Jupiter came into your fifth house. Now, that was all about creating a lot more fun and a lot more creativity and encouraging you to follow your passions and follow your joy. Also a time possibly when you were thinking about having children, dependent on your age. But children and what we're birthing, the products of our loins, so to speak, would have had a greater importance to us during this time, with Jupiter going through this area. Jupiter would have been highlighting everything that brings you joy, including new romance, including more sensuality, because sex definitely comes into the fifth house for sure. So it would have actually been quite a nice, pleasurable experience having Jupiter in this time. You may have also found that you've got a little bit undisciplined during this time because there's been a lot of things going on. Now, as Jupiter moves into the sign of Gemini, you've got all these creative plates spinning at the same time, one over here, and blah, blah, blah. So it's created a lot of extra work for you and a lot of extra potential. And all of your projects may well be spinning in slightly different directions at different speeds, and with a different level of intensity that you have to apply to one, to the other, to the other. It's not like everything is standardized. Jupiter has got a lot of things on the go. And so as Jupiter comes into here, very much like a Mrs. Doubtfire kind of au pair house, nanny kind of energy, what's going on is you've got all these different things happening at home, like in terms of how your work fits into home, how your health fits into home, how you manage your budget. Are people happy there? What's your food like? So all of the organizational aspects of your life are getting rejigged. They are a bit more fun, a bit more chaotic. You're having to find more time. And how do you find more time when you're already very busy? I mean, they do say, if you want to get something done, ask a busy person. Never has that been truer for you right now, Capricorn ascendant. Things are likely to get very, very busy. You may well find that as you come to the end of this period, and as Jupiter goes into June in 2025, that you've already started to thin it out. And I really would recommend that you do that. So for instance, with Jupiter coming into this area, it's going to get very, very busy. And remember, Jupiter is about creating a sense of well-being and also rising you up, because when you are in a place of well-being and doing what brings you joy, you do naturally rise, you do naturally lighten up. That's just kind of how it happens. So you may well think, okay, so I've got this going on, this going on, this going on, this going on. I've got this much time. And unless you can bend time, which I've not met anyone that can, I'd be interested to, however. But if you can't bend time, then you have to think, well, I've got so many hours in the day. This is where we're all equitable, in fact. We've all got, 24 hours in every day. So many that we have the choice to be awake through. We all have the same amount of days. The same amount of days in every year. We have the same opportunities, and it's for us to choose how we fill that time. It's your responsibility. So Jupiter here is saying, okay, which ones are bringing you joy? Which ones are going to help you progress because of your joy, and which are going to help you feel good. And they're the things to keep. And anything that's not adding to your life, as difficult as it may be, you might want to think about letting go of it, and or thinking, is there someone else that can manage this for me? Someone else that it would actually bring joy to, in which case trust somebody else. Now, this is a big one. One of the things about Jupiter is he leads and he sets a vision and he engages people to work with him. Jupiter doesn't keep all the power to himself. So this might be a really good time for you to let some things go to people that can, eat it all up, on your behalf. Now, why is this so important? Well, the next movement from June 2025 will be Jupiter going into the sign of Cancer, into your 7th house. And this is a time when you want as much free time, as much space as possible, because Jupiter can't really bring people to your attention if you're too busy. You're just not going to really get the chance to meet people. So clear as much space as you can in this year, and also connect into what's bringing you as much joy as you can in this year. And then between all of that, you will be well primed to meet the love of your life, better friends, and meet a lot of fantastic, positive, can-do people. So it's pretty good, actually. Now, a couple of things to bear in mind, and that is that there is this persistent square between Saturn and Jupiter for pretty much the whole year. Saturn is here in the 3rd house right now, really saying that within your community, you may well find that some of the energies there are a little bit restrictive. You might be noticing where some things in your community, in your circle of friends, are just feeling a little bit tight. Maybe they're putting a few things on you. Maybe they're not quite the same vibration that you're really in right now. So that's worth recognizing. How does that fit in? Well, right now you're in a very expanded place and your life is changing and lots of new things are coming in. You may well feel that it's difficult to bring in all this new stuff when there's a lot of old stuff that's trying to hold you in place. It's just worth considering. When you are too much in the new, you may well find that it's uncomfortable in the old. Now, what I would put to you is, how is it possible to work both of these at the same time? How is it possible to appreciate the structure that you have within your existing community? And how might that help you to balance your life a bit better and maybe have a bit more discernment in what you focus on in your life? The other thing to consider, and this is more helpful, and that is Pluto is radicalizing how you do your money and also how you value yourself. So it's really creating a radical approach to understanding your true value and how you earn money because of it. And then that is also playing into the 6th house. Now, the 6th house also encompasses your work and your earnings and how you organize your finances. And also, obviously, if you're earning more money, you can live nicer. You can have a much nicer lifestyle. So it's also worth recognizing that the more you're radicalizing how you see yourself, the greater your potential to have a smoother life. So I think this is exciting. I think there's some great stuff there for you, Capricorn ascendant. So wishing you lots of luck with this Jupiter in Gemini transit. Obviously, if you need any extra help or you want to chat through all these great opportunities, then just give me a shout. But anyway, lots of love to you. Bye for now. And on to Aquarius ascendant. So Aquarius, this is going to be an interesting time for you because you are an Aquarius ascendant, an air sign, and Jupiter is moving into another air sign. So this bodes well. So let's examine a little bit more about Jupiter's effect and how it has propelled you in life so far and how it's likely to propel you again, and also where it's likely to move you to after this particular transit. Before we do that, though, I would like to talk about what was happening in the summer of 2000 and also the summer of 2012, because they were the last times that Jupiter was in Gemini. So a very, very strong time for you. And I'm wondering what was actually happening. This is energizing your 5th house. So Yeah, Jupiter is in your 5th house right now, or is just moving into the 5th house. But let's go back a couple of years. So in 2022, Jupiter went into the sign of Aries and was really bringing expansion to the part of your life that's very much about your community, your friends, what you're learning, very much like sort of integral learning, day-to-day learning. It's a very, very social position, and one where social acceptance really comes in. So I think Jupiter going through that part of your chart in 2022 to 2023 was a time when your social life could have really increased, but in particular, your social capital could have almost been a bit contagious. You know, it's almost like good ideas worth sharing. It's like you were a good person and lots of people would have wanted to get to know you. It can also bring up a bit too much of that. So you may well have found that there were times when you felt a little bit smothered by people and just wanted them to kind of clear away. However, it's usually like the 3rd house is seen as quite a helpful place. And having Jupiter there could have really brought up some good things to learn, and a good sense of sharing between you and friends and peers and this, that, and the other. Then the next, so I guess one of the things of this period would have been to get a greater sense of belonging. That's the thing that I'm really getting. Now, as Jupiter moved into the 4th house from May 2023 right up until right now, Jupiter's influence was to create a sense of well-being at home. So really what you were creating in 2022 was this sense of belonging somewhere, you know, that you are somebody who belongs to a community. And then in the last year, you've been perfecting that feeling of belonging. You've realized that almost like wherever you go, you belong. And so even if you felt a bit like an outcast, which a lot of people with Aquarius rising tend to feel slightly on the outside of things, but wherever you go, there's been this feeling that you can get or generate the feeling of belonging within you. So that's really cool. Now what's springing up as Jupiter's going into the 5th house is from that sense of belonging, from that sense of well-being within your body, there is the opportunity to create. Because I guess it's logical. If you're not comfortable in your body and if you're not comfortable feeling safe and secure, then at some level, the energy of creation is not so easily accessed. You know, like when you are safe and secure, when you do have that sense of belonging, there is a sense of rightness that can absolutely tip forward into the sense of creativity. So that's what's really coming up. And again, check in. What were you doing in 2000 and 2012? Because how were you creating then? How did you feel safe enough, or how did you have enough trust and faith in yourself to go about and create a life for yourself, or possibly even create a life? Like the 5th house is all about having fun and also following our joy and following our passions. As houses go, this is a pretty good house to have Jupiter in, because Jupiter is enhancing everything that you're interested in. Now, the 5th house is a place where we procreate. It's also a place where we are sensuous and where we explore our sexuality, where we have more intensity and also intimacy. So, you know, if you are somebody seeking a partner, this could be actually quite helpful, having Jupiter coming into this area of intimacy or increased intimacy. Very, very beneficial. And obviously, if you're wanting to create a life, like considering having children, that naturally fits into this particular cycle. But aside from the sort of sexual energies and the physical creation, you might also be thinking in terms of like creating something outside of yourself, you know, like a beautiful piece of art, you know, some kind of beautiful garden, you know, some kind of song, some kind of dance, you know. It's where we are passionate. That's what is really, really flowing. So I think this energy is amazing. And if you're not completely feeling safe and secure right now, which I really do see as precursors to the 5th house experience, I would still take a moment or two to think, okay, I might not be safe completely in my life, but where do I feel a level of safety? Because where you can see you're safe, or where you can see you have faith in your confidence and faith in your abilities, it's if you can channel that energy, if you can focus in on that energy is likely to bring up the sense of creativity. So it activates the Jupiter in Gemini energy. Where is this going? Well, from June 2025, as Jupiter moves into the sign of Cancer, where it's exalted and super lucky, it's coming into your 6th house, really showing that you've created so much of a joy and a passion. Like your passion for life has grown so much that actually the big challenge when Jupiter goes into Cancer is, how do you manage everything that you've created? How do you manage your life with this new flow? How do you manage your life with possibly a new partner or a new child? So the consequences of your creativity come out, and then Jupiter has to find a way to make it work. So it's definitely a journey that you're on right now. Now, there's a couple of other things I want to mention. So we've got some support and we've also got some stresses, both of which are actually able to help you move further into the Jupiter energy. So Jupiter in a square to Saturn is taking place between July 2024 and July 2025. It's pretty much square the whole time, to a stronger or lesser degree, always within 8 degrees of orb. So, it's in a square, apart from the end of February, right the way through to the beginning of April. So, March, it's out of that square altogether. But the square energy between Jupiter and Saturn is interesting. And I talk about this in part 1, by the way. So if you want to know more about that, check it out there. But Saturn in the sign of Pisces in your 2nd house is really trying to bring about some regularity in how you earn your money, and is also trying to Saturn in the 2nd house can sometimes make us feel a little bit discouraged about our earning potential, and then discouraged about our actual value. What is the value of what I do? How can I raise my value? How can I feel better in myself? So there is something of the self-esteem going on right now with Saturn in this part of your chart. And the fact that it's there is also a reminder that it's time to do something about it. So yes, you could feel very uncomfortable and not very confident about what you're earning or how you're earning. However, you could use that as a prompt to think, okay, well, what do I need to get comfortable earning? And then Saturn starts to give you its persistence, its determination, its serious approach and its commitment. So Saturn can really help us, but we almost have to get real to the pain of it first. So there is this pain of wanting to do more and be more and feel like a higher level of self-esteem. And yet Jupiter here in the 5th house is a bit of a party animal. I mean, if there was a party going on in any of these houses, it's the 5th house. If there was any level of impropriety or irresponsibility, being really laissez-faire and let's see, like easy come, easy go, then the 5th house is the main culprit for sure. So you've got Saturn trying to be correct and getting everything right as if your life depends on it, because it's very much linked into your self-esteem. And then you got Jupiter in the 5th saying, well, hey, who cares? And so they're almost working at odds. One is boosting your self-esteem and the other is boosting your sense of satisfaction and joy. So, try and get the balance between those two. It's not going to be easily resolved, but think how is Saturn serving you by, reminding you that maybe you're not as secure in yourself as you think. The other thing to consider is, like right now, you've got Pluto in the 1st house. Pluto is there to transform how you identify. It's really turning over a whole new leaf for you, having Pluto going through your 1st house. It's a real kind of jolt from the universe to get really serious about yourself and to recognize that actually you do have power. And so it's really getting you to focus on where your power is, how it might be different from how you might have answered that question just 5 years ago. There is something going on with you in terms of how you have power in your image, your identity, your body, and how you present yourself in the world. And then Jupiter in the 5th is very much about what that power is leading you towards. So if you can connect into your inner power and allow yourself to feel powerful, which is an interesting one, because Aquarius, out of all the signs, if there was a sign, if I was to ask all the astrologers out there in the world, which sign is least is the least most likely to say it wants power right now, it would be the Aquarian. I'm pretty sure of that. So right now, Aquarians are kind of challenging themselves a little bit, thinking, I don't want power. And yet I realize that I do have power, and there is a power play going on. And the more you allow yourself to acknowledge where you can be powerful, it's feeding into your creativity. The two go hand in hand for you right now. So bring it in, reward yourself, and recognize your inner power and see what transforms. So all in all, I think this Jupiter in Gemini is going to be a really great time for you. And it's going to create a lot of new opportunities. So there you go. I hope that was helpful. Lots of love to you. And if I can be of any help, just get in touch. Bye for now. So on to Pisces now. So Pisces, one of your rulers is Jupiter, the other is Neptune. Now, at the time when Jupiter is going into the sign of Gemini, it's actually in a really great relationship to Neptune, which is just here. So there is a lovely sort of powerful connection right now between both of your rulers. So that's the first thing I wanted to acknowledge. As Jupiter is changing signs, going into the sign of Gemini, it's really helping you. It's both of your rulers are working together. They are working to create a sense of possibility and also a belief in yourself, or a belief in your spiritual awareness. I love this for you as a possibility. So let's talk now about how Jupiter going through these signs, these houses, has created a change and a shift in your life so that we can fully appreciate what it's doing in the sign of Gemini. The other thing I want to do is also talk about the aspects between Pluto and Jupiter, and also Saturn and Jupiter, and how both of those are helping you. One of them is more challenging than the other. So the square from Saturn to Jupiter is really challenging. And the Jupiter trine to Pluto is really stimulating and transforming. But whereas one seems good and the other seems bad, they are both still helping you to progress in life. So let's talk about this a bit more now. First thing I want to start with is, where were you and what were you doing in the summer of 2000 and also the summer of 2012? Because that is where Jupiter, those are the times when Jupiter was last in the sign of Gemini. So in 2020 and 2012 and now in 2024, you get a pattern here of 12 years. So that was the last time Jupiter was here, and it's in your fourth house. It's transforming the way you live. And if anything, Jupiter in the fourth house is about bringing some peace and bringing some well-being, bringing a sense of all is right in the home, all is right in your inner world. The fourth house is about the home, but it's also about your inner security. Like, how do you find your inner security? How do you connect to your security? Is it implied? Is it inherent? And where is your home? Is it your actual house? Is it your community? Is it your body? Is it just something in, that's part of your soul? Who knows? But Jupiter is here to really stir it up. And I wonder how that was reflected in 2000 and 2012. I also want to take you back to 2022, when Jupiter went into the sign of Aries in your second house, and it would have absolutely brought up lots of ways to value yourself and see the absolute value of who you are and what you do. So Jupiter going through this sign may have also uplifted how other people value your work. And so often when Jupiter goes through this part of your chart, it corresponds with a wage increase or a whole new line of work, good ideas that later bring you an income. So everything to do with receiving resources is absolutely amplified during that time. And it usually goes hand in hand that when you start to see the money come in, your sense of self, your sense of self-esteem rises up. Now, it's also a time when it's just, even if you're not earning money, it's still a good time to recognize the good that you bring, the true value of who you are. So I love Jupiter in the second house. Now, when it moved into the third house on the 25th of May 2023, up until right now, that in May 2024, Jupiter was in the sign of Taurus in your third house. Now, during this time, it's almost like as you learnt to value yourself more, all of a sudden your contributions in the local community seem to be noticed. You know, if anything, it's created a sense of togetherness, a sense of bonding. It's where you realize you belong to a community, and maybe not just one. You know, I think going in the third house, if we go back a couple of decades, we may have found that actually Jupiter going through the third house was very much about our unique environment, our unique community. And yet now, like 20 odd years later, what is a community now? Are we talking about your local community, your online community, your community of friends from high school, your community of friends from work? You know, we can belong to many communities and they can all overlap in interesting different ways. So, you know, this is the time, this last year has been a time of recognizing how you belong, recognizing how when you learn to feel better about yourself here, magically other people learn to feel better about you, and it's brought you more of that opportunity into your life. Now, as Jupiter moves into the sign of Gemini, that sense of belonging is creating a deeper sense of belonging to the home, or a sense of knowing, intuitive knowing that you are A, in the right place, B, that you absolutely, definitely belong, and C, that you can extend that out to the people closest to you, so that, you know, you could live within a home with your family, or that you could live within a home with a really good friend, that your home becomes a place that people make a beeline to, that your home maybe has space to have like-minded people come into. So I think of the Jupiterian home as more like a bookshop, you know, where people can come and grab a coffee and read a book. I always almost think of it as a book club where people come and hang out and they have coffee, a bit like a coffee shop as well, I guess. But the sort of Jupiter in the fourth house is really, you know, entertaining more at home, bringing the outside in, and really feeling that sense of beautiful well-being and belonging. So this is a really nice time, actually, a really nice placement to have Jupiter in. Now, where will this lead to when Jupiter goes into your fifth house? Well, really from that security, that level of I belong, I'm important, and look, I've got these great people around me, and I absolutely know I'm here right now. From that level of certainty about yourself and that level of well-being that certainty would have created, is birthing the passion, it's birthing the joy, it's birthing possibly romance and intimacy. It's creating much more of a party, a much more of a celebratory feeling. So Jupiter coming into this from June 2025 is really, this is where Jupiter really has a party and really celebrates himself. So you can see that this Jupiter journey that you're on right now is really leading you in a nice direction. And so that's what I really wanted for you to get out of this reading, is that you are on a journey, and your journey right now is to get a greater sense of well-being and peace and belonging in yourself. Now, we've also got these aspects that are playing into it. I'm going to go to the square first. So Jupiter square Saturn. Jupiter square Saturn, I mean, that's going on for pretty much a whole year, almost continuously, from July 2024 to July 2025, with the exception of March, a little bit of the end of February, and a little bit of April. So, you know, Jupiter is in a square to Saturn for a really long time during this period. Now, what does that do? Well, Saturn is a bit straight-laced, and right now your Saturn is in the first house. So most likely you're pushing yourself a little bit and tightening up your identity somewhat. Maybe making some changes in terms of how your body's working. You might be quite interested in getting your body quite structurally aligned, which is a very Saturn thing. And, you know, the first house is about the body. So I imagine that you're getting your health back in order, and maybe getting some better boundaries. Maybe in recent times you've been very open to people. And so the sort of discernment side of Saturn will be discerning who gets to come in and who doesn't. And then the Jupiter side is wide open in your fourth house, like the house, the bit of you that you normally protect and guard. It's like your little sacred space. Fascinating, really. It's like your little cave. If there was a retreat center going on anywhere in this chart, it might be the fourth house, could be the 12th, maybe the 8th as well, but the fourth most definitely. So you've got Jupiter wide open in the place of your emotional behavioral retreat center, and then you've got Saturn tight in the area of your personality and your body, and the aura that you give off. So they're kind of working against each other. So the more open you are in terms of how you live and the more warmth that you're bringing to your home, the more the Saturn side is going to be saying, hang on a second, it's time to put in some barriers. If we don't put in any boundaries, this could go really wild and things could get out of control. And yet, if you follow that diktat from Saturn, if you follow that intention of shutting yourself down and getting into some kind of vibrational alignment with your boundaries, then your life here with Jupiter in the 4th house is going to be minimized. So my advice for you is recognize where this stress exists for you and observe it and thank it. Recognize that the Saturn side of you, which is most likely the gatekeeper to your unconscious mind, is saying, I need to protect you. It's just trying to keep you safe. It's just trying to make sure that you don't open yourself up to some dangerous situations. And so you can thank that part of yourself that is caring and that has discernment for you. And, like Jupiter in the 4th house, it just wants you to experience greater levels of love and acceptance and a greater sense of warmth at home, warmth in your heart. So, you might choose to ask yourself, how can I be both of these things? How can I integrate both of these energies so that a new dimension can exist from this astrology right now? And that's where I'm going to leave it. So I hope that's helpful for you, Pisces ascendant. What a time, eh? So sending you lots of love. I hope you have a great Jupiter in Gemini experience, and please do stay connected. Bye for now. I always enjoy this, and thank you for giving me the motivation to do this, because if nobody watched my videos, I probably would do it, but I probably wouldn't put as much effort in. And I realize, and this is a real sort of Jupiter thing, and obviously I'm a Sagittarius that loves to learn, and I realize that in putting together these little diagrams and kind of bursting forth with a sort of channeled astrological forecast, I'm learning myself all the time. So every time I do this, I'm glad that if it brings help and healing and possibilities and a sense of curiosity about how you can feel better in your life, that makes me feel amazing to think that that could be occurring. But it really works for me too. It really, really does, because I get new perspectives every time I look at this. And what's really come out as I've gone through all of these signs is that there really are, there are so many stereotypes about the planets and whether they're a good planet or a bad planet. And obviously, Jupiter has really got a reputation for being good and honorable and really well-meaning. And I think that is true. And I also see that Jupiter situations can really blow up out of control quite quickly. And so I've been experiencing, so when I was doing the Scorpio reading and talking very much about how in recent times Jupiter's position has brought in, a sense of outrageousness because it's been in a conjunction with Uranus in the 7th house. And so Uranus had been there for quite a while, so I was used to people being a bit crazy around me, and also that it was bringing a lot more encouragement for me to be myself and to encourage me to come out of my shell a bit more. As Jupiter came in, it really increased the amount of crazy that I was experiencing in terms of the people around me, all the beautiful, talented people that I meet, all the eclectic people I meet, all very sort of Uranian themes, but also the amount of mental, I don't want to say illness, because, I think we can come in and out of sanity, quite regularly. Some of us do it all day long, like once a minute almost, because their mind works just like that. But, I've seen the full gamut of emotions and stuff over this last year. With Uranus in my 7th house as quite an ongoing thing. And then with Jupiter coming closer and closer to it, really kind of exploded. And I've really experienced the greatness of it and the wonder of it. And of course, isn't it funny, you know, all of my work is pretty much astrology, and Uranus is an absolute, you know, it is the planet of astrologers for sure. You know, it's about the consciousnesses. You know, Uranus is synonymous with astrology, I would say. And Jupiter about feeling good. And that's what really makes me laugh, is I really feel like my business is coming into its own now. You know, I named it so many years ago, Feel Good Astrology. And now the feel good, the Jupiter, and the astrology, Uranus, have come together, and my life has gone and it has brought in so many good, solid, and amazing, and different, and diverse, and weird, and wacky, and thoughtful, and really wildly intelligent people into my realm. It's amazing. And it has also brought a weird kind of stalkerish energy too. So yeah, like going through all of the different signs, I realized that you know, we are always judging our situations as to whether they're bad or good. And yeah, I realized through my recent skirmishes with stalker type energy, it's also really helped me. And that's the thing with the Jupiter. I really think that whether he's bringing you en masse these great opportunities, or also some dodgy energies, one of the things that I observe with Jupiter is that it gets you back on track really, really quickly. So it's giving you a massive nudge. So it's almost like the voice of the universe. You know, it's creating a conduit to really hear what's going on out there, so you can actually take some action. So I'm so grateful for all the people that I've managed to reach and that I get to have an online relationship with. It's wonderful. I really am appreciative of that. And, you know, I'm also pleased that I have had some attention from some crazy people. Not inviting it, mind, but, you know, it's really, really helpful. You know, it's what I needed to move me on to the next challenge that's coming up. So yeah, I wonder what Jupiter is bringing you too much of. You know, are you having too much of a good thing? And is it going to bring you too much of something else? And if it does, just observe it and recognize that it is helping you. It's like a nudge. It's a nudge. It's getting you back on track. So wherever you are in the world right now, I absolutely wish that this Jupiter and Gemini, which I think is one of the most dynamic Jupiter ingresses for quite some time, I hope it moves you in all of the ways that you would most like to be inspired, delighted, and amazed by. So anyway, lots and lots of love to you, and catch you real soon. Bye for now.